Welcome to our study session. We welcome you and wish to excuse the mayor. He's been in Washington, D.C. on some housing issues. And needless to say, with all of the weather between here and there, his flight was delayed and he will not make it at all today, it does not look like. So, in the interest of good government, let's move forward. Shall we have a roll call?
Yes, sir. Adamson? Here. Bray?
Here.
Gina?
Yes.
Lurick? Here. Johnston?
Yes.
Manon? Flash?
Thank you very much. Let's turn to agenda item number 2, Construction Board of Appeals and Review Update. Lynn, please.
Good morning, Council
good
President and Council. I'm the staff liaison for the Construction Board of Appeals, Lynn Transtrom, and I'd like to present a brief overview of what the Construction Board of Appeals does, their responsibilities, and their makeup. The Construction Board of Appeals is made up of 6 tradespersons. We've got Ted Booth as our chair. He's representing architects, engineers, type of work that goes on. Mike Bright, he's a local general contractor. Terry Swallow, he's a plumbing contractor. Richard Lehman, he's an electrical contractor. Robert Jensen, he's a mechanical contractor. And Richard Nelson, he's with Fire Services. And our council representative is Mr. Bray. So the Construction Board of Appeals is a requirement of both the building code and the fire code. And basically what it is it allows people to have an avenue between building and fire decisions that are made by the building official or the fire marshal and the city council. It gives them a place to stop prior to appealing to the city council. It works 2 ways for us. A lot of times it's an advantage to the person that wants to do something that is a discretionary call that's been made by the building or fire official that they don't like. And on the other hand, sometimes it works to our advantage. It allows us to quantify decisions that we would like to make to help an individual that are probably a gray area of the code. So, you know, it's not always against the customer. Sometimes it's for them. Sometimes, you know, it resolves problems. So, you know, the board has limited authority. They cannot just waive building or fire code requirements. As I mentioned earlier, it is a matter of just them making appeals for discretionary calls. So, this board doesn't get used very often, and that's actually a very good thing for us. I think we had one incident last year. Was the only Board of Appeals meeting that we conducted, and each of our guys that are on that board, you know, have expertise in their particular area, and it's worked well for us in the past. The other thing that the Construction Board of Appeals does have the authority to do is waive fence requirements as outlined by the municipal ordinance regarding installation and regulation of fences. And that's probably what we utilize them most for, actually. But again, last year we had one incident. That was the total involvement for the Construction Board of Appeals. So,
Do you think that's the staff that is making it possible for things to go so smoothly, or what would you attribute that to, Lynn?
well, you know, I don't know for sure, Jim.
The easy answer would be yes.
Yeah, I don't want to pat myself or the fire marshal on the back too much, but you know, I think we make reasonable decisions on a whole, and people are satisfied with that. So, if you have any questions regarding that board, try to answer them for you. Good.
Do you have anything coming up that you know of?
You know, I do think that we have one coming up that's going to involve the fire department and the installation of a fire sprinkler system. There's a breakoff point as to when a fire sprinkler system is required based on the occupant load of a structure. And I think that this one is very close to that occupant load. I mean, does it become inherently more dangerous if you're one person over that number, or where do you go? And, you know, I think that's something that the Board of Appeals that's one where they can help quantify our decision and give us a reason to be a defensible reason as to why we allowed an exception or allowed the code to go a little further than it actually is listed as. So that's it.
Thank you very much.
Short and sweet.
Going beyond that, how are things in our building department in general with all of the growth we're experiencing?
You know, we're looking forward to things really picking up. We're starting to see some of that take place. We just got the full set of plans in for the LDS temple yesterday. They weighed probably about 75 or 80 pounds.
Wow.
They're a stack of plans about 3 inches high, and so you know, but that's a big project. So we're getting a lot of apartment buildings, also a lot of apartments coming in. That seems to be a big push at the present time.
Are we keeping up building-wise with the growth that's anticipated?
Yeah, I believe that we are, Jim. Yes.
Okay, great. Staff-wise, how are you?
Just having fun.
You're definitely full-time.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments of Lynn?
Good luck on your retirement.
Yeah, this could be my last presentation, folks. So, away we go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's turn to agenda item number 3, the CDBG Advisory Committee update. Representatives from the Community Development Block Grant Advisory Committee will discuss the committee's goals and projects, as well as council's policies and expectations.
Good morning, President and City Council. I am Janine Mitchell. I am the CDBG Program Coordinator, and I have with me this morning Brenda Pollard. She's on the Advisory Committee, and she'll be going over the program year 2018 CDBG accomplishments this morning.
Well, thank you for listening to our report, and I would like to begin by mentioning that Bina is our representative from the council, and she is a great asset to our team, so thank you for your help. As you'll note from slide 1 and slide 2 on the first page, the CDBG Advisory Committee is composed of 7 members, 4 of which are from locally designated areas. The committee meets monthly to discuss and help identify community needs that can be addressed by the CDBG program and reviews overall progress of meeting community goals as described in the consolidated plan. The committee is responsible for reviewing HUD-required documents such as action plans, consolidated plans, and end-of-the-year performance reports, and also provides oversight of the city's funding award system and fair housing activities. We pretty much have a full load. On the next page, major accomplishments for the program year 2018 include completion of program year 2019 action plan and program year 2018 CAPER, completion of 5 sub-recipient projects, completion of 27 home rehab projects between the city and NeighborWorks Pocatello, completion of 4 individual sidewalk projects and 1 neighborhood project on East Hayden. In program year 2019, the committee will oversee the development of the program year 2020 action plan, completion of the 4 sub-recipient projects, the continued success of the home rehab and sidewalk program. And then on
Brenda, while you're on sidewalks, we recently had people here talking about walkability. Did your committee have any input or a listening ear to that?
Well, we only can if they're in LMI areas.
Yeah, I don't think it never reached our committee for that, but yeah, we're looking at them, and if they meet LMI areas and if they meet our requirements to do them, we will go out with our funding and redo those sidewalks.
Okay. So frequently we do not coordinate all of our efforts.
Right.
And I'd like this to be a good one because it's so critical to the well-being of all citizens in our community.
And if you know of areas, let us know.
Okay.
And we
They're all
can go
over
out there.
town.
What?
Sidewalks in terrible shape all over town.
That might be a matter that it'd have to be taken up with funds other than CDBG funds, which are pretty restricted, and could consume our whole budget and more.
I think Melanie is taking close notes of this, so maybe we can put this into our future.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for asking. Okay. We are on the bottom of page 2. Slide 4, right? Okay. As part of the committee's commitment to affirmatively further fair housing, the committee took several actions, including providing fair housing brochures to the public, issued fair housing proclamation, and co-hosting a fair housing training with Idaho Falls on April 24th. And we have one coming up again soon.
I'm not doing it on April 20th.
This one? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
So everybody's
That's the
invited
one
to go.
coming up. All right, next page. CDBG staff provides the committee with monthly fair housing updates that include discrimination testing, fair housing lawsuits locally and across the U.S. That's been very interesting. Fair housing issues in Pocatello, guidance for persons affected by housing discrimination, and how other Idaho communities promote fair housing.
How are we doing, honestly, with fair housing?
Well, how do you feel?
I think I've only been here 8 months, but I think the city's actually doing fairly well with it.
Is it sufficiently on our agenda so that all citizens are aware of our desire for everyone to be treated equally?
I feel so Melanie probably knows a little bit more because I haven't been here for 8 months, but I think so. And hopefully people will come out. April is Fair Housing Month. So hopefully people will come out to the training. Every other year we either have a training here, which is in the City Council chambers, and then this year we're having it co-hosted with Idaho Falls. So we try to have it out there. We try to have it in all of our contracts that we send out to all of our sub-recipients as part of being, fair housing guidance. So I think we're doing a very good job for Pocatello.
The training's for whom?
For anybody that wants to go. So it's open to the public. We sent out email blasts. Idaho Falls is the one who put it on this year, but we usually send email blasts to everybody. If you didn't get one, I'm sorry. I sent that to Idaho Falls person in charge of it. It's still open if you guys want to go. Like I said, it's April 24th. It's all-day training. People from Idaho Fair Housing Council will come. The lawyers will come and give you a day overview. They'll do a lot of, this year they're doing a lot of criminal backgrounds and a lot of animal rights, because a lot of people have animals and a lot of people who don't want to rent to people with animals, and a lot of reasonable accommodations are going to be discussed this year at Fair Housing. So it's open to anybody who wants to go.
Do you, if I may, do you get a lot of real estate agents and planning departments and building people who come in for that? What's usually the turnout like for that?
I am not sure in Pocatello. Again, I've only been here 8 months, so hopefully Melanie has there been.
Melanie Gigley, Planning and Development Services Director. In the past, we don't get, the majority of who we get are, yes, a fair number of real estate agents, local entities such as the Housing Authority, NeighborWorks, those kinds of groups send a lot of people. And then sometimes they are folks who are doing it as part of a remediation plan with HUD. They're required to attend because they have had a problem. Generally in Pocatello, we haven't had a lot of issues. There are a few, at least in my tenure, but not a huge number. I think we've done a pretty good job of getting the word out. One thing we have done, and I don't know that we're scheduled this year, but we've gone to like the Realtors Board annual or monthly meeting and presented directly to them too. But yeah, we get a good cross section of architects, engineers, not usually engineers, builders.
Okay.
How about landlords?
Yes, yep, bunches of landlords.
Is there a hot topic?
Animals are usually
Animals
a
are
very
hot
hot
topic.
topic. Yes, companion animals.
Do we have abuses with the companion animals in our community, do you think?
too early to.
Yes, okay.
Not that we hear of as complaints. That's about the only way I can answer that.
Yeah.
I just hear some really interesting
I
stories.
suspect I suspect it goes on, yes.
I think some people have learned to go to the criteria by which a companion animal can be defined, rather than just taking the word that it's a companion animal.
And that's what part of this training is to help landlords understand what you can and cannot do. And many of them can probably do more than they thought, but they didn't know, and it's kind of a scary spot in the law, you know, for them.
Oh, I heard like recently, not in our town, but in the outskirts outside of Pocatello, there was some bias done in terms of selling a property or something so my ear kind of shot up. I was really glad that it's not happening in our community, but it happens, you know, and this was more of a racial bias than service animal.
It does happen, I'm sure in Idaho and across the country. I do know that the Journal, and I don't know who plans for it, but has the fair housing in the advertisements virtually every day, talking about fairness in housing issues.
Thank you.
Feel free to stay. All right, the next slide talks about the program year 2018, that it was a great year for most of the program accomplishments, specifically in housing rehab occupied by LMI families, low to moderate income families. And then the bottom slide shows the accomplishments of the CD program, how evident they are throughout the community. We have new sidewalks in 5 low to moderate income areas, and many existing homes were rehabilitated for low to moderate income homeowners. The city's lead grant is going strong, with 12 homes certified as lead safe and 5 that are underway to becoming lead safe. So that's a big plus. Question?
Well, I'm just really concerned in terms of all of the housing stock that we have that has lead-based paint. And I'm surprised we haven't had more response to Janine's program.
I am too, but we're getting a lot. We've had 5 in the last month.
Oh, good. So it's picking
So
up.
it's getting out there, and the weather's getting better, and we're getting a lot more people. And Poke High is going to be helping us the end of May. They're going to be going out and putting flyers on everybody's doors and telling about our program. So hopefully we'll be getting a lot more people. And it'd be so nice to get this grant again in 2021 for another 3 years. It'd be awesome.
What was our target goal again for that? How many houses per year?
82.
82 per year.
Yeah. No, 82 for 3 years. Sorry.
For 3 years,
3-year
okay.
grant. Yeah. And we're going slow, but we're going to get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it picking up, do you see? Or?
It is. Again, I've been here for 8 months, and we've done, 17, but we've done 10 since I've been here. So that's awesome, and 5 in the last month. So again, with the weather changing, it's been really awesome. And people are actually getting the word out, and other people, you know, neighbors are telling neighbors we're doing 2 houses side by side. So that's kind of nice right now.
The weather's an interesting question too. Is there a better time to do these projects? A better time of year?
Yeah, a lot of them are scraping and painting all of our houses. We have 5 right now that have to be totally scraped down to nothing and repainted. And it has to be 40 degrees and higher with no rain, which is kind of a hit and miss in eastern Idaho. So.
The 40 degrees or the rain?
Yeah.
Yes. I wanted to note that this grant is kind of hard to ramp up, but of other, we're newbies in the program. Other newbies that are the same age as us in the program have 2 or 3 houses. So honestly, we're doing a really good job. It's just a very steep ramp up. So HUD's really happy with our numbers. They sound low, but it's a much better number than you might think, just based
So
on what we hope in 3 years.
With Pocatello having some of the oldest housing stock in the state and doing a good job, is there a likelihood of getting a further grant beyond this?
We hope so, but we do have to prove ourselves.
Okay.
It's next summer that we have to reapply.
Okay.
Roger and I, participating in one of the parades, noticed the really terrible curb and gutter along Center and Clark Streets. Because this is such a main entry into our community, we would like to see a plan put together where some of your funds and maybe some things that the city has could make a difference in the beauty of people, especially coming into
I
Pocatello.
think that needs to be a
We could discuss
priority.
that.
Yeah. We've done some here and there. Part of it, we have rules that say it has to be primarily residential. So once you get into commercial, it does have to be LMI. To be honest, at this point, it isn't something you can't direct. Otherwise, we have stayed really with sidewalks, not curbs and gutters, because we're trying to make it safe for walking, and curb and gutter is extremely expensive. We can probably do 3 blocks of sidewalk for half a block of curb and gutter. So we end up having to balance all of that in.
Well, if you guys will do the sidewalks, maybe we can figure out how to do the curb and gutter.
There you go.
If they are
You know, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
that kind of partnership is what
Yeah, we're
makes this
just,
work better.
and we know that through the rehab programs you've done, Neighborhood Works has done,
Yeah.
Habitat, that anytime you improve a house, you're helping to improve a neighborhood as the ramification.
Sure.
So we're taking that into account, that those areas, not only are they part of the first impression people get on Pocatello, but they're part of the impression that people carry back off of those streets into neighborhoods.
Yeah. The opposite of the broken window effect.
Yeah.
And the good news on Center and Clark, the areas that we were talking about are mostly residential, so it seems
Yeah,
like it would
it is. The sidewalks
fit.
are pot,
Yeah.
As well, I think it's all, it's not all LMI. I'd have to check to
It would
see if
be-
it's all LMI.
Well, it's gonna
Because we
do-
have
I
that
think
whole
so,
rate
too.
issue too.
And there's some of it that is not sidewalked on Center Street.
Yeah.
And that,
Places
you
with
know,
no sidewalks, which again is something that if we direct our use, we have not in the past, it's always been a
mhm.
correct bad rather than put new in.
Yeah, but-
But again, it's not something we couldn't change.
But it's
or
for
take-
walkability,
Yeah.
getting
Right.
sidewalks in.
You don't want to have to go out to the
Well, and
street.
that's,
comes to
you know, I
a
mean,
stop.
there's people that
does.
are going up the hill for other services.
And that's all the farther you go.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, it just makes it easier on them.
Anything else?
Well, I'd just like to mention that we don't have the numbers down here, but you can see 27 housing rehabs, that's 27 families whose lives have been blessed, besides the new residential units. And besides thinking about families that we've helped, think about the tax dollars that's also put back into the city. So I think this has been a very valuable program in our community and something we should actively support and stay behind for years to come. So, thank you.
Thank you for your valuable volunteer service, Brenda. You're an example to all of us.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Agenda item number 4, Zoo Idaho. Parks and Recreation staff will be present to review the final draft version of a revised 20-year master plan for Zoo Idaho and to seek council input and direction regarding the plan.
Good morning, President, Council. I'm Peter Pruitt, Zoo Idaho Superintendent, and this is John Baggs, Park and Rec Director. Today, we'd like to review the final draft for the Zoo Idaho's 20-year master plan and then seek input and a direction regarding the plan from Council. As an introduction, we'll just kind of go through what a master plan is. It is a 20-year master plan, and I'd like to stress that it's a living document, so none of this is set in stone. It's allowed for flexibility based on need and opportunities. And the master plan has to be mission-driven, and when we say mission-driven, Zoo Idaho's mission is preserving Intermountain West wildlife and habitat through conservation and education. What that means is that we will be staying an indigenous zoo and only exhibiting animals found within the Intermountain West region of the United States. How we kind of go through a master plan is it's a long-term approach and to direct our development of the zoo's site, facilities, and physical environment. It establishes a pretty bold vision while at the same time offering realistic and feasible steps. The realistic and feasible is really important. We cannot, it wouldn't work if I developed a 20-year master plan that's $100 million. Our community can't support that. So we have to look at what our community can support and really provide opportunities for the community to become directly involved in the growth and of Zoo Idaho and our master plan.
Peter, what was the public's input initially?
Initially, we did a quick little survey, a couple surveys the first couple of years that I was in here. The majority of the input really came from my staff. What I ended up doing, I found a old signage that had this big view of Zoo Idaho, and I gave them a bunch of markers, and I said, draw on this, and then we'll discuss everything, your ideas, whether they're feasible, realistic, the pros and cons of each idea. And if council suggests that we do submit the master plan to the public, that's when we'll take additional public comment on the master plan. This is still a draft, and once we receive public comments, that's when we'll turn around and work on the finalized version of the master plan. The background and methodology, we kind of talked a little bit about how we developed this master plan. We are still very directly focused on gaining accreditation through the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. We really want to increase community support. And when I got here almost 5 years ago, I was a little surprised that within a community the size of Pocatello and Chubby, not everyone realized that there was a zoo here. And I think we are definitely growing our public awareness and our community awareness of the zoo and finding ways and opportunities for our community to support the zoo. We also really are looking at capturing our visitors and tourists along the I-15, I-86 corridor. Yellowstone tourism is growing exponentially every single year, and we're looking at ways to capture some of them. And as more people go through Yellowstone, it's getting harder and harder to see a lot of the animals there, and we have those. And we have the ability not only to give them safe, close-up views of our critters, we also have a significantly larger educational component added to our facilities as opposed to Yellowstone. We don't want to work against our amazing landscape. We want to work with it. There are things that I've learned in Idaho you can't do. I grew up in Iowa. You can dig anywhere in Iowa. In Idaho, you can't do that. And when you run into boulders and lava bench, it increases the price of whatever you're doing drastically and significantly. So we don't want to fight against our landscape. We want to work with it. And with the zoo, there's a lot of growth and repair that we need, so we have to really hit both major and minor renovations, repairs, and new exhibits, new facilities at the same time. We can't just focus in on one and then when that's done, move to the next one, because it'll really make our job that much harder. You know, we have to hit the zoo on multiple angles to really get it into the shape we need it to be for accreditation.
What are our deficiencies keeping us from being accredited?
For accreditation right now, the two biggest things that we will get that will stop us is our black bear exhibit and the pathways. We don't really have an appropriate ADA pathway up to the upper level. And those are the two big ones. Those are the most costly. Another smaller one that we can get, and if we can do it in stages, it's not going to be necessarily super expensive, is a quarantine facility, a separate quarantine facility, and it doesn't have to be very large because we're not going to be bringing in animals on a regular basis anymore. Basically, all the exhibits that we have presently are filled to their capacity, and we would the quarantine would be there, where right now we use our upper barn, which is kind of in the middle of the upper level of the zoo. That really it's not an effective quarantine. You know, we still have to bring these animals into the middle of the zoo to quarantine them. We need to move it closer to the perimeter edge. So the pathways and the black bears are the two big ones. And quarantine, I can work through our budget and various grants. On that, I've actually already started working with Idaho Fish and Game on a possibility of them partnering with the quarantine, because last year, a great example is there was a nuisance grizzly bear up in Island Park area. That's only going to get more common with grizzly bears, black bears, and some other animals. And we were able to hold that young grizzly bear for about a week until Fish and Game found another facility in Texas to transfer it to. If we had an appropriate quarantine facility, we could have held that bear for months with very minimal time requirements and budget requirements to hold that. And it gives Fish and Game and us a longer chance of finding the best facilities for those nuisance animals.
What's the advantage of being accredited?
The biggest advantage is it opens us up to a whole pool of money, grants, and research opportunities that we don't really have right now. So that's on the operational side. For our Zoo Society side, is once we're accredited, our members, the zoo members, will have a reciprocal agreement with all AZA accredited zoos across the United States. That's 215 zoos. Right now we have reciprocal agreements with about 75. So you can you almost triple the agreements. So they would get discounted entrance into any AZA accredited zoo across the U.S. So it's a really big, important factor for our society. It just makes memberships all that more appealing.
Well, it looks like there'd be a reverse to that too, in that once you're listed in that grouping, that their people would,
other zoos would know too. Yeah.
So they'd be more likely to stop as part of their travel
Absolutely.
plan.
Yep.
Council President Johnston and members of the council, we're also pursuing grant funding for the rehabilitation of the pass. We unsuccessfully petitioned Portneuf Health Trust that went under the United Way umbrella this year, and were unfortunately not awarded any grant funding, but we'll certainly try again next year. The focus now for the Zoo Society and the zoo is to try and finish that entrance area with the zoo entrance building. So that's kind of our focus now. But
It's really looking good. I mean,
it's coming
awesome.
along. We're putting together the resources for the construction of that building. As you might recall, the Zoo Society has already agreed to purchase the building itself for us. And Peter has mentioned a number of times to me that he feels very strongly that a capital campaign for the grizzly bear exhibit would be the next priority.
Black bear.
Black bear, I'm sorry. And he anticipates good success in the community with that. So.
Yeah. And we're looking at clever, creative ways for some of our grants, like with the United Way grant. With Pathway, I'm working with our Zoo Society on a health membership. So it would allow access year-round to the zoo, weather dependent, and it is to walk the zoo versus walking a mall or some other place. And when you combine that with the United Way type grant with Pathways, where we'd even like to have exercise stations. When you look at the upper level, it's a wide open space. We don't want a lot of buildings there, and it'll give plenty of opportunity to walk through that area. I did the whole zoo with the present or the future pathway plans. It's 1.1 mile. So you walk the zoo 3 laps, you've got 3 miles in, and it's not flat. So it's a good workout.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Do you have an estimate in terms of the cost for improving that trail?
So the estimate to get the pathway around the wetlands was right around $65,000, and this is me kind of doing some basic estimates and not knowing fully the cost for road base, asphalt, and all that other good stuff. And I think it's relatively close. Hopefully I'm a little bit high. You kind of like to overestimate than underestimate on projects like that. And then doing an ADA pathway connecting the lower levels to the upper level, it could be around 50,000. What we'd end up doing is in that open area behind Elk, we would just move that dirt. The path would cut up against the lava bench. And if you recall at the zoo, as you get past the mule deer exhibit, you go down a little dip and start going up a fairly steep pathway, and there's a light right there. There's an outcropping on that lava bench, and there's a gap in between the main bench and that outcropping, and we just shoot the path right through that. And so you get, one of our best features of the zoo is that lava bench, and people don't have access to it. And so I want people to get up to it. And then it would connect about 2/3 of the way up that south flat path, and we've got our ADA pathway right there.
Good.
So, and if you look at, this is kind of like the overall big picture of the master plan. And I would like to point out, even though we haven't got the final approval or final draft of the master plan, we're already working on some significant sections of it. We will this spring plant the aquatic vegetation in the wetlands, and probably towards the end of next year, the vegetation will be established, and that's when we'll look at bringing in the trumpeter swans. And that's a major piece of that. When you look at the grassland area, we have the grizzly bear exhibit, and we have half of the bison pronghorn exhibit done. And then when you go down to the mountain area, we already have half of the elk exhibit done. With the homestead, we are just finishing up our new contact yard where we have goats and where kids can get in there. And this fall, the society received a $25,000 grant from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Partners for Fish and Wildlife, to develop a pollinator garden in the zoo. And so we'll be doing the designs for that. And with that, we also have permission that we will do another pollinator garden outside of the zoo next to our Firewise demonstration garden. We want to make sure people see how effective pollinator and native plants are without having to come into the zoo too. So we're kind of doing both sides of the perimeter fence. And we're already working on that master plan. Yep.
When you've been going through this, have you had contact with Sagebrush Steve? Because I think they're doing
the Sagebrush Land Trust,
yes.
Sagebrush Land Trust.
Yeah.
Well, I actually have reached out to them my first year I was here, and so we do have. I do occasionally have discussions with them, and I've brought in the Native Plant Society multiple times to walk through the zoo to work with us on that. So yeah.
So they received a large amount of land recently, and I think they have some plans to have some sort of educational component to it. And it would look like what you're doing and what they're doing would really dovetail together. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're real far along on their plans, but we can show it on a microcosm at our place, so to speak, and they can perhaps show it as it interfaces with really the urban
step.
wild.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yes, and I will reach out and contact with them. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. So, just some brief goals. Of course, guest experience is always priority. If people don't want to come back to the zoo, it doesn't serve us any good. So we really have to look at amenities, and that right now we're looking at quick, easy ways to do rest areas and shade stations. We're building shade areas for our animals, which will be exactly what we build for our guests. And the great part is, with all the basalt rock available to us, we can find plenty of flat ones, and we'll start using the rock as benches instead of spending $400 on a bench that isn't necessarily totally comfortable. We can go out and just move some basalt rock in that's probably more comfortable but a lot more unique. So, and also finding unique ways to get restrooms up in the upper level. Again, it's really hard to do a lot in the upper level we're sitting on top of the lava bench. So we'll be working on that. Education, of course, conservation can't be our priority if we aren't educating the community. Play, we really want to find quick, easy, cost-effective ways to add activities across the zoo, not just have it in a central location, but have play activities throughout the whole zoo in front of exhibits. And of course, our gift shop, and we will emphasize local products. If you want to talk about conservation, one of the best steps that we can take towards conservation is to purchase through our local businesses and community, not mass-produced stuff. You know, support our local businesses. That really is, people forget about that, but that is a great way to really start good conservation habits. And of course, our exhibits. We can build world-class exhibits that meet all and exceed all husbandry standards without spending millions of dollars. And that's what we're going to focus in on. The entrance, of course, we can already see that we've got the demonstration garden. That was a partnership with the BLM and firewise.org. We've got our pathway, our first ADA pathway, and we're working on finalizing our 2-story log cabin. And I actually met a gentleman last year that works with the VFW, and he actually came a couple weeks ago, and he's working on a donation of wheelchairs and electric carts to help move people through the zoo. So that's really exciting. And of course, this is a want, and it'll probably be the last exhibit we build here on the master plan, and that's a river otter exhibit. I mean, they're fantastic, fun critters, but we've got other priorities first. And then we'll move into our homestead, and this is the marquee exhibit, of course, will be our black bear exhibit. And we'll keep it in the same location, but we'll extend it out towards the contact yard, 2nd Avenue, and get them on grass. By not recreating the exhibit, we were able to build a significantly better exhibit at reduced costs. We don't need to relocate it. We can just expand on what we have. And that'll include the barnyard and the row of small mammals and raptors. The idea behind this is it's a transition area from an acreage, and as you move out into the ranch land, etc., move away from buildings, you just see that transition of animals. And then that will move into our mountainous region where we have our elk and mule deer and bighorn sheep. This is a rendering of what we hope for it to look eventually. To the left is our wolf exhibit, and this is of people who are coming down from the upper level, and they'll move into the wolves, and then we're looking at putting these wildlife overpasses. It'll connect the elk yard to the mule deer yard. Again, it's to talk about how we can take steps to mitigate human and wildlife conflict, and these overpasses are fantastic ways to get animals across interstates and roadways, whether they go over the top or the bottom. So everyone's going to start seeing these more and more, and so hopefully they have an idea of and it's going to look cool. And again, this is kind of a little bit of about the mountainous region. Woodland caribou, we do have a small population of caribou up in the panhandle, the Selkirk caribou. There's like 60 of them. So in the state of Idaho, they are listed as endangered.
They no longer exist. They took the last ones out.
They took the last ones out. So again, that's also very important for an exhibit. We won't actually use the Selkirk caribou. We can get them through other zoos, but use woodland caribou as an example of how an animal can be localized, extinct, or become endangered. So it's just not the big population. You have to look within smaller populations too. And then the grasslands, we'll move our cougars up top. This will be part of the bison, pronghorn, coyote, grizzly bear complex. Like I say, we've got half of the bison pronghorn exhibit done. We'll build the second half, and that'll be in between coyote and grizzly bear, and then the third stage would be the overpass. The idea too is when we look at the master plan, we need to build these things in stages, because we might not be able to have the funding to do the complete project right away. So if we have it set up in stages, we can build, fundraise, and move on. And again, this is some of the animals, and I would love to have a train station up top. It's made perfect for a train, and I would have no problem driving the train too every day in the summer.
No overtime.
No overtime, okay. I'm salaried, so I can just. Yep. And then, of course, our wetlands project that we're working on right now. And this, to me, is really exciting. We had our native grasses planted last November. We got little shoots sticking up. We had a couple spots that had some leaks over the winter. And once again, Komatsu graciously donated the use of sheep's foot. So we were able to compact the rest of the areas this spring. And I filled it up 2 weeks ago, and we are sitting steady, holding water. It hasn't dropped at all. So in the end of May, we will get ready to plant the aquatic vegetation throughout the wetlands, and again, give it a year and a half for everything to get established, and we'll start bringing in trumpeter swans. And we've included a slight modification on the south end of the wetlands. It's a low bowl. It was actually too deep for the wetlands, and it would cost too much for us to fill that in. So what we did is we moved the south dike up, and we'll be building initially a sandhill crane exhibit right in that area, and the hopes is to eventually bring in whooping cranes, one of the most endangered animals in North America, and start a breeding program with them.
Peter, the wetlands area was funded the vast majority by a succession of U.S. Fish and Wildlife grants,
yep.
with a little bit of city kind of kicking in. And could you put an estimate for the council on that Komatsu equipment donation? It was substantial.
Yeah, just the equipment that we used, it was well over $200,000 for the time that we used them in the time period if we were to rent them. So, and then we haven't got the final version yet, but Komatsu came up and put together a really nice promotional video, high quality, that once I get the okay, that it's the final edit, we'll share with everyone. So now we've got this major company sending out this promotional video about the wetlands project at Zoo Idaho.
Great.
And a little bit of, we actually, when we talk about a living document, we're moving the butterfly house down below to the homestead as part of the pollinator garden. And then lastly is our pathway. We're going to close off that north end, that slope. It's like a 5,000% grade. It's a super steep pathway, and there's no way that we can really do anything to make that safe. And so eventually we'll close that off and use the south slope as kind of it'll be like a figure-8 path where they'll go up and down the south slope. And the difference there with that, the wetlands pathway, we will actually have a secondary path that cuts on the south side, so it'll go between the wetlands and the crane exhibit. If people don't want to walk all the way around the wetlands, we've got a shorter distance for them. And when we start looking at costs, again, we have to look at what's realistic for this community. And with a lot of these quick success projects, we actually will build in-house on our own, and that ends up just being material costs. And that really makes life better for us and the community. Initially, it's more work for my staff, but it's well worth it. And when you look at like the gift shop and the Black Bear exhibit, these are the ones that we have to go out and do capital campaigns and raise funds for.
Well, I think having those estimates is really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think of Sarah If and the great contribution
Yes.
she made to the grizzly bear exhibit. And I think there are other people like that.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
But we just need to let them know there's an opportunity for them to be generous.
Yes. And the big part too is to hold to those costs. Just because we get a significant donation doesn't mean that we can up it. The goal is to be able to get these exhibits and facilities put in as soon as possible. And then move on to the rest of the zoo. There's definitely great cost-effective ways of building all these exhibits. And with the wetlands grassland, so you can see the Science Center building, that is one of those that if a donation comes in, we run with it. We don't necessarily need the Science Center, but the Science Center is designed to be a working lab where you go out and actually collect data in our wetlands and come back and use with our education programs and Idaho State University, that we are able to make that basically a working, legitimate science center. And on our wetlands, we've actually expanded it beyond trumpeter swans. It wasn't off a grant, it was just U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service says we have funds and they're going to build us a bat condominium on the wetlands. It'll hold several hundred bats. So it's a massive bat house in a sense. And that will be exciting and fun. So we've got that going. ISU, I'm meeting with a faculty member tomorrow. He's got a couple of grad students who need to practice on field cameras and field recorders. So they're going to start trying to capture animals coming in and starting to use the wetlands and recording the vocalizations and their calls and all that. So we're already headlong with ISU on the wetlands too.
Do you secretly want to be Batman?
In
the Bat Cave?
It would be fun. I actually want to build a hibernaculum. That's where the bats hibernate, on the side of the education building. And that would, we'd have to put a little flower garden underneath the hibernaculum, but, to catch all the droppings. But yes, when I was in Minnesota, I really fell into bat conservation and Bat Conservation International with white nose syndrome. It's not here yet, but we've got reported cases in Nebraska and Kansas, and there is a reported case in Washington. And when white nose syndrome, it's a fungus. When they get into a bat hibernaculum, it's 98% mortality. So you can have several million bats in a hibernaculum and think about 98% of them dying. So bat conservation will soon become a key issue here. Yep. And then our mountain area, that includes like the mule deer, the bighorn caribou, and wolf. I'm actually excited about a wolf exhibit. That definitely can be built in-house. And will it be $100,000? It depends on the cost of chain link. It's a real simple exhibit. It's chain link. And it's, for me, it'll just be information on wolves. I think our community and Idahoans in general just really need to take a look at wolves in a safe setting and learn to appreciate them as wolves without throwing opinions on them. And that's our responsibility, is educate. And wolves will be a great exhibit to educate our community. And then our homestead, again, the multi-use camp, that is another one. It's going to be unique within zoo settings, and we really do want to run it like a campground. And that's one that will take a little bit more time and research to do. I think John and I have never really had campground management experience, so it'll take a little bit of time. It'll be up on top by the wetlands. And of course, the river otter exhibit, which will be great. When you add all these numbers up, we're looking at just slightly over $3 million for a 20-year master plan. Completely feasible and doable for our community.
What is the source of water for the zoo? Is it city water?
Yep.
Would we be beneficial to have a well?
I'm not sure.
Okay, because it looks like.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't know if we can put a well up there. Like with the wetlands, if it's, like this winter, we get plenty of snow and early rains, the snow melt and the rains will keep the wetland filled. And, and we want to run it like as natural as a wetland possible. So we let it fill up, and then as the summer proceeds, there will be some evaporation in there. And, it could be the point where we're not even doing anything with the water in the wetlands. It's going on its own. And then, like with our grizzly bear exhibit in the pool, it's got a filtration system in there. So we'll probably drop the pool now as they start to shed about once every 2 weeks, just because fur gets in there and it can mess up our filtration pump and all that other good stuff. But when they're not shedding, once a month, and when it turns winter, we just keep the pool circulating. We don't ever drop it. So like with the river otter too, it's the same thing. We don't want to necessarily always drop and add. We want to be able to filter it and circulate it so we won't be using much water at all.
Yeah, one of the, just a brief expansion on the campground area. So Peter and I have been kind of scheming this for a little while, and we envisioned something not too terribly big, now I don't know, 8 spots or something like that. We feel like there's some ample opportunities for grants with Idaho Parks and Rec and other entities, but we kind of envision a place where folks can come and have an overnight opportunity, and maybe they hit the zoo, they hit Fort Hall, they hit the aquatics complex, and just kind of enjoy all the different amenities that we have. There's a county dump station that's very conveniently located over off of Barton over there, just adjacent to where it would be. And we're envisioning this for up adjacent to the Fort Hall area. So in the future, but kind of exciting to think about the possibilities.
And the great part about a small zoo is a lot of times you're forced to think outside of the box. And the rules of major zoos don't apply to us, so we have the ability to try different things and be creative. And you know, that's the fun part. It's also challenging, and you know, I don't know very many zoos that actually have campgrounds attached to it.
Would the accreditation affect that at all?
No,
Okay.
no, because what we would end up doing is when the zoo closes, the campground no longer has access to the zoo.
And actually what I meant, not just the campground, but your ability to sort of not have to follow the rules other zoos follow it.
No, the
You'd
thing is,
still be pretty flexible in what you could do?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, they look at, with accreditation, what they'll look at is, of course, the facilities. They'll look at all the policies and procedures and trainings and drills and all this other good stuff. They will look at community support, and then they'll focus in on finances.
May I ask a question? What's your annual fundraiser success like?
We aren't, the Zoo Society is not doing an annual fundraiser right now. They have got, we've got an annual campaign. We're asking 500 people, the Society's asking 500 people to donate $100. And with an annual campaign, that's an ongoing 365-day fundraiser. It's for Zoo Society operational costs to help the Society grow their reserves and give them the ability to put on more events. And that would also give them the ability to, if I can convince them to hand some money over to the zoo for certain projects, they would have those funds to do that. We do the Zoo Society's first event is in June. It's a roar and pour event where it's a wine walk around the zoo. Then they'll have ice cream zoofari, and then the third one is Oktoberfest, right, where it's a beer walk through the zoo. And they are looking at developing a annual big fundraiser event. Again, the hard part is trying to be creative. We're a smaller community, and a lot of these big fundraisers are the typical silent auction, food, live auction, and a band. And there's only so many businesses in the community, and everyone gets tapped out with people coming, can you donate, can you donate? And so they're trying to find an event where we don't necessarily have to ask other businesses to donate items. We would rather have them come in, pay tickets, have a fun time, and throw cash instead of product.
I understand.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a committee for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And I can send you our society contacts if you're interested, or if you know someone who might be interested.
Sure.
Yep.
They do a good job too, I will say, on social media. The zoo board, I guess.
Yeah, the Zoo Society, and then my education curator, Rachel, she, one of her responsibilities is to try to post several times each week about not just the zoo, but if there's some conservation article out, some science article, I want her to post those things too.
Things come up on a very regular basis, so I think that's a great way to sort of keep them out there in the public's mind.
And how does the school district or the schools in the area, do they utilize the?
Absolutely. So every year
right?
we get a U.S. Bank Corps grant that funds zoo outreaches to District 25 first and second grade, and it also funds field trips for first and second grade. So we're always working with first and second. Rachel has now moved into every grade of District 25. Middle school was kind of hit and miss prior, and she's in every middle school, and now she's working in every high school. A great example is New Horizon High School. They have a greenhouse, and part of the wetlands, for $30, I purchased multiple packets of wildflower seeds, and the high schoolers have actually this winter planted them and are growing plugs for the wetland projects in their greenhouse. So we're moving just beyond outreaches, but looking into the high schools for legitimate projects.
That's amazing. That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
That's an excellent buy-in for future donators.
Yes, absolutely. It's like with the trumpeter swans. You know, swans live 30 plus years, and part of the breeding program is we'll work with District 25 and have the kids help Fish and Wildlife and Fish and Game release these white birds into wetlands. And technically, a second grader can release this white bird, and then, you know, so many years later, they can have one of their kids release another white bird off the same program. So here's my bird, now here's your bird. So there's significant long-term outreach.
Remind us of staff. How many?
So I have 6, not counting me, I have 6 full-time. I have 1 education curator, 3 full-time zookeeper staff, 1 maintenance full-time, and a full-time registrar. And a registrar does all our documentation, paperwork, makes sure all our licenses are up to date and all that too. So
How do you handle veterinarian services?
we contract through Alpine Animal Hospital. And so they come every Tuesday and do rounds. They are on basically 24-hour call. And how I work with that is it's not my job to say yes or no to call a vet. I want every time if there's a concern from one of my keepers or staff, they will call. I let them call, or they actually work through my lead keep, and she'll call, because you never know. And if there's a concern for them, then it's a concern for me. And then with Alpine, they've got a large staff there of vets, and our primary 2 doctors are, when they're not available, there's 2 others that will show up just like that.
Great. Very interesting, thank you.
And council, this Peter gave this presentation also to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board at our February meeting, and they were very supportive of the draft plan at that time. Just kind of an FYI. So, thank you.
What can we do to assist in reaffirming this is the direction we'd like to go?
If you guys are comfortable with the plan, then I would work with Logan, and we would start going about introducing it to the community.
Council, what's your pleasure?
I would like to do that, so I move that we approve the zoo master plan.
The draft.
Yeah, the draft.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Any additional discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Oh, no, we have to roll call. I forget what meeting I'm in.
That would be faster.
It would be faster. Please, Ruth.
Yes, sir. Adamson?
Yes.
Lurick?
Yes.
Bray?
Yes.
Cheatham?
Yes.
Manon?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you, Council.
Move
very
forward,
much.
please.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
He said the pen was
Okay,
They had
we
800 people opening
now would like to go to agenda item number 5, proposal to use city-owned building at 429 Washington Street for Big Mama's House administrative offices. Please join us. Big Mama's House representatives will present to review their proposal to utilize the city-owned building at 429 Washington Street, currently used by Pocatello Free Clinic. Pocatello Free Clinic is moving into a new facility in May, and Big Mama's House representatives would like to use the vacated building for administrative action offices.
Good morning, President and council members. I'm here today to talk about the free clinic. On our agenda, current services provided by Big Mama's House.
I'm sorry?
Can we get them to introduce themselves?
Oh, yes, please. We all know you, but please, for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. Pastor Jacqueline Teresa Thomas.
Ed Snell,
And Ed, your position again is
President of the Board.
President of the Board.
Dina Bowden, Executive Assistant to Pastor Thomas.
Okay, thank you.
Our agenda. Current services provided by Big Mama's House. A deeper look inside of Big Mama's House. Need for expansion. Why the community needs the expansion. Current services. Every month, approximately 25 to 35 walk through our doors for assistance with the following services: food service, spiritual and physical wellness, job placement assistance, access to adult education, access to mental health services, access to locating and receiving social services, assisting with acquiring permanent housing. More than just a number. No one should experience homelessness. No one should be without a safe, stable place to call home. Our program is a hands up, not a hand out. In order to effectively continue our services and expand our own mission, we require access to more space for the following: group therapy and counseling services, domestic violence and anger management, and substance abuse resources, life skills education, job readiness, and business training. Together we can. Our main goals are leading resident and self-help programs to help to gain respect for themselves and others, providing a structured lifestyle which encourages responsibility and strong work ethics, opportunity for mental, physical, and spiritual wellness. Thank you for your consideration. Are there any questions?
The use of this building, describe exactly what's going to, we have some constraints relative to religious organizations and discounting prices on our buildings. I have not read your bylaws, nor have I read any of the other structure things, but I am aware that we have a real concern relative to meeting our requirements of the law. Mm-hmm. Can you help me with this a little bit more in terms of, I mean, we know you, and we know the good work that you're wanting to do with this, but I'm concerned in terms of this building we're looking at and whether or not we legally can provide a reduced fee. Does that make sense? Am I too vague?
Can we answer that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I can help with that.
Please, Ed.
Okay, so number one, the rules are pretty well set from the federal government on what can be, what would you say, described as a faith-based operation and still qualify for meeting what you're calling separation. And we can do that very easily. And the way we, well, number one, understand that Big Mama's House has its own 501c3. It's registered separately from Praise Temple of God. So the only connection there is, in fact, that the Big Mama is heading this up. She's the heart and the spirit behind it. But it's got a separate board from her church. All of that's run separately. In addition to that, faith-based propositions are allowed by the federal government. They just can't be, for example, if somebody comes in, services can't be required that they go to her church or Pastor Bray's church or something like that. There can't be any kind of requirement like that. But we could have a cross up there, we could have a menorah, we could do all sorts of things so long as it doesn't appear that we are pushing or requiring that they attend a church or do something like that. Does that make sense?
I understand that.
Okay.
Could you provide for me a copy of bylaws?
Sure.
And any other written document that I can have legal review so that we can make the appropriate decision? Jared was going to be here, but he's in negotiations in another room. Or we could maybe move faster. We'll probably have to postpone the decision until after that has been reviewed.
What do you plan to do with the building?
Do our counseling, getting them ready for job skills, having the physical and the mental, anything that goes with the physical and the mental. And even if they need, I know it's like you said, we're not forcing any religious services, anything like that. It's strictly to get the community ready to go out and live structured lives.
In the letter you sent, the first bullet item was food service. Do you plan to create meals in that building?
No, the food service is like Meals on Wheels, the food bank, the pantries that we have around the community. That's what the food is there for.
But it wouldn't be in that building?
No, we will not be cooking.
It would be directing people to
Yeah,
those other
directing to the
services?
sources.
Okay. Helping them find the resources they need?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're anticipating administrative offices, counseling, what else?
Training?
Job readiness skills,
Okay.
locating and receiving social services, and assistance requiring permanent housing.
Okay.
It's even, we've got people volunteering from the community. For example, Norma Clemens, she's always picking on me. Hurry up and get this done so I can start teaching remedial reading for adults. And so there's those kind of things that are out there. We just don't have the facilities to offer it. And so by moving into this particular building, it gives us a chance to address those very issues at a cost we can afford.
What's your anticipated hours of operation?
We open every morning from 9 to 5.
The classes and the counseling obviously would be based on need, so that if evening classes are required and counseling is required after hours, Bill McKee is offered to help with the counseling and organize graduate students from the university to come in and help with those things. So
It's really across all sections of our community are supportive and wanting this to be successful.
yeah. Just to throw out another name that you would recognize, Lance Colbert is saying that he wants to help with teaching basic financial wherewithal.
Literacy.
Yeah, literacy. And so, as I said, we've got people. I've even got a contact in Texas. This is crazy how things work. A contact in Texas that they think that they can provide for free, and I've even talked to Pastor Jackie about this. Somebody comes in and they've got a low credit score, they can't do anything. There's a company in Texas that does this for a living that's willing, at least on paper right now, to do that for free. So that if somebody comes in, they need their credit score built up, they'll help them. I mean, the help is just all over the place.
So essentially, Big Mama's House is like the go-to center where people can come and ask and get the resources they need, the information, and you would provide the direction along with maybe classes in the evening if need be, and assistance that way.
Have you toured the building?
Yes,
Will it work for what you want to do?
yes, we will.
Where do you think the majority of your referrals will come from, Big Mama?
The thing that's so amazing to us right now is word of mouth, and from other resources out in the community. They're sending them to Big Mama's House. We get telephone calls all day long from all over the place. So it's just not one entity. It's the community in general that's coming together to send referrals our way.
I'm really excited for what you're doing.
Thank you.
It's a blessing to our community.
Thank you.
I admire your leadership and be able to get these great people to work with you. Who all is on the board of directors? I don't remember.
Okay. Pardon? Okay. Of course, there's myself, Craig and Amber. Yeah, they just came on board. He's an independent business owner, has a consulting company. He just works out of Pocatello. His wife is a nurse practitioner. We have Bernice Acree from American Falls that drives in all the time to help us out. I'm missing some here.
Vera Ramirez.
Vera actually just retired.
Oh, okay.
Sanju's wife.
Renee Chowdhury.
Renee Chowdhury. And who else am I forgetting anybody?
Yeah, we've got an open position.
Yeah, I think those are the current members right now.
Nice cross-section of our community.
Yeah.
Any questions for Big Mama?
I have another quick question.
Please.
Are you guys keeping track of the demographic in terms of women with children, men?
Yes.
Who's calling? You guys are
Yes,
keeping
we
track?
have- we
Because I
have-
think that would be really good information for us or even
Okay,
community
but
members
some of it is also, isn't it, the service that they require, we're not allowed to.
No, I mean just in terms of like the
You have to-
population.
Oh, okay.
It's not the specifics, but
Okay.
We're tracking that and how we're serving, how we're helping them and what we've been able to provide for them and so forth.
What is the nature of the request? Because you're asking for the facility. Is it rent-free, $1 a year? You know, that type of stuff. Are you planning on paying all the utilities? I don't see any detail in terms of the nature of the request here.
Okay, I would like to get the same amenities that the free clinic has had.
In other words, $1 a year, and you pay your own utilities.
Yes.
Now, repairs, I think, would be your responsibility also. If there were repairs needed in the building. I don't remember that being dealt with.
I don't remember seeing anything on that.
Yeah, and I don't either. I do know that it's in
Bad shape.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's an area we're going to have to address. Okay, is there anything else anyone would like to ask or anything else to be presented? We're going to have to deal with this after you get those documents to me to get, they just need to go to Jared, so bypass me.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a blessed day.
We are,
Thank you very much.
because you've been here.
Council President, I do not see agenda item number
I think they're
6
setting it.
representatives here. It could be that they are they here? Oh, okay. Very good then.
We'll take a 5-minute break right
Okay.
now. Because I'm going to move this meeting along. Back from our short recess. We are now ready for agenda item number 6, 244 West Center Street, the Monarch Building update. Endurance Home Investments, LLC, owners of the Monarch Building located at 244 West Center Street, will be present to provide a structural integrity analysis, which will include a time frame for the completion of the project to the City Council as requested by City Council at their January 10th, 2019 work session. Welcome, and please reintroduce yourselves.
Yes, thank you, thank you. I'm Tiffany Wilson.
You're welcome to sit.
Perfect.
The mic will pick you up better that way.
Excellent. Tiffany Wilson. Allie and I, we co-own Endurance Home Investments here in Pocatello. And we are also owners of the Monarch Building.
And I'm Allie Glenn. She kind of took care of the other stuff.
Yes.
Excellent, ladies. Thank you.
Yes. Shall we just jump right in?
Please, sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So just wanted to share a little bit about Allie and I and really what we do on a day-to-day basis and really just a little bit about us in general.
You're going to tell us how you happen to get to Pocatello. I know, but maybe
Yes.
the others don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Please share that.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, we can do that.
It's a good story. But Allie and I, we both went to ISU. Both college athletes, so I threw the javelin in college.
Nice volleyball for the first 4 years. In my 5th year, I played basketball. Rough play. I experienced the basketball program. I'll say.
And to be honest, I never thought I would live in Pocatello this long, but I've lived here since 2003 now, so it's pretty cool. And since living here, we decided in 2016 to do something a little bit crazy. I was working at INL, and Allie was coaching volleyball for Idaho State, and we just took a jump and we started our own business. So about 3 years ago, we started Endurance Home Investments and started targeting distressed properties in this area to renovate and clean up. Right about the same time, we purchased Radon Professionals and own a radon mitigation company.
And they do a good job. I've personally experienced them.
Yes. Yeah, but those two things have set us up to become licensed contractors and do things that we never thought before. Really.
It's a little bit different than volleyball, but it turns out there's similar problems. You have to work through the problem and get to the next one, so it's pretty fun.
Yeah. But we were really passionate about what we do, and we're very passionate about Pocatello, which kind of leads to the Monarch Building. The Monarch Building is on the historical registry. It contributes to the registry, and which makes it unique, very much so as all the other historical buildings downtown. But this is an excerpt taken right from the registry. And I wonder, 236 to 244, we don't have all those numbers on our building anymore. Yeah. That's a lot of doors. But with that, Allie and I, we purchased the Monarch Building in 2017. So it was March 2017 that we bought the building. And just kind of giving a reference point, the fire was 2014. We purchased in 2017. And that's just the tidbit of the ownership history as well there. And
one of the best parts about this project so far has been truly, honestly, getting to know more about Pocatello through this project directly. If you want to know a really good way to get introduced to some of the historical parts about Pocatello, buy an old building, and it's the fastest way. Because the amount of stories that you'll hear conversating with other owners is it's pretty cool, and it's directly tied into all of our current real estate plan is to renovate the old buildings and to see, is there a story that can still be told, or is this one really, has it lived its life? Is it done? And being able to responsibly answer that question and know that you're going to put it back in a way that it'll stay there for another 100+ years. That's our main focus. We're not trying to be fly-by-nighters and come in and say, hey, there's a hailstorm. I heard if we're roofers right now, we can make a ton of money. That's not what the point is. Right. The point is to do something bigger and better. That'll last a long time. And through this, the Monarch Building specifically, and the other older properties, you really start to, it's really easy to get committed really fast to the historical nature of these buildings.
Yeah. Well, and it makes as part of Pocatello, it's very important. We have a really cool downtown. We have a very cool downtown, and Old Town, it's on the up and up, and everything about it is positive, and we want to contribute to that for sure. And just scrolling through, these are some of the historical photos that when we look back and we restore the facade, what it looked like in the early 1900s. And also, it's cool to see the Paris there to the left and the First National on the right. again, yeah. The Monarch Hotel up on the right, probably one of my favorite photos ever. But you guys want to know about the good stuff, right? So we are very happy to present the structural evaluation and share the details. It's a very long report, but so what we have right here is a snapshot of the tidbits of the report. We worked with Kyle Dana from Forest Corinne, out of Logan, Utah. Kyle has worked on many other historical building projects, just finished one up and had a lot of knowledge to share with us that's going to be really helpful in moving forward. But I'll give you guys a minute to read that. But in short, the Monarch Building and historical buildings that we have downtown are unreinforced masonry, most of them. Unreinforced masonry is much different than a brand new brick building, because you have a brand new brick building has rebar and it has more, well, lateral resistance. And what's different about historical buildings that we want to change, I guess, but still save at the same time, is we want to be able to do a seismic retrofit. Similar to other buildings other historical buildings, to bring them up to code is to do a seismic retrofit. So in the early 1900s, buildings didn't have to meet the structural or the seismic code requirements that we have now. So what we want to do is change that. And part of this evaluation includes those things that will be necessary to perform a seismic retrofit. It also includes the necessary requirements from a safety standpoint to put in place, and that's the two bulleted items there. Is addressing public safety for the Monarch Building will require temporary improvements until permanent structure improvements can be made in the future, which include the temporary bracing on the walls, and then following the OSHA standards because it is a construction site. Feasibility economically, with this, it's very feasible. We're looking at roughly $50,000 for materials and labor, and then you would have design on top of that. So I'm going to say $100,000 for our budgeting purposes to give us, but that is very feasible. And I know a lot of question has been brought up about, well, is it really economically feasible? Because it's all well and good if we're passionate and we're here and present, but the numbers matter, and financially it does. So looking overall at the positive things that we see here is the exterior and interior brick walls are in good condition. They're able to support the vertical loads. Vertical loads, we know seismically in the early 1900s, these buildings weren't designed for seismic reinforcements. So, I mean, that's awesome. It's awesome, vertical loads. We definitely, just like all the other unreinforced masonry buildings downtown, in time will definitely need to be brought up to code with a seismic retrofit. So we would we intend to do that as part of our project. And that indeed will assure if we ever do have an earthquake, that either, well, the requirements for seismic is you want to give people in the building enough time to get out safely. So it doesn't mean that seismically, if there were an earthquake, that the building wouldn't fall down. It just means that people can get out in time and they'd be safe. But we also do have to give you reassurance on the structural side while we're in construction. The report also says that the workers and small equipment to get in the building to perform construction, it's safe to do so. Mm-hmm. So we also have that, which is reassuring as well. And after through the like 60 pages of information, one of the most I was very pleased hearing this as well, is that of all the fire definitely damaged the building, but what remains on the inside is intact. And there are there are a few joists that we need to replace, but this report really lays out a plan for how we need to proceed to do the temporary bracing, and then it also has a more detailed scope for the permanent bracing. But to address the question at hand, that I think why questions got brought up 3 months ago is public safety, and I feel like based on this and what we've done to date and having this extra evaluation has definitely confirmed that our plan, like we're doing the right thing. And now it's just a matter of really executing. It's finishing up the design and
Councilwoman Adamson has a question for you.
Yeah, can you speak to the, give us some insight into the bracing that is mentioned there? Is that something that would extend out into the public right-of-way? If so, how much?
Oh, no, so it's interior wall bracing. So everything's done from the inside. So that exterior walls will be tied in. And this part we don't know specifically. That's
we still have to do the
scope
design.
For the exact design, but they'll pull in basically the exterior walls into those interior masonry walls that are still solid and good. So everything will be on the interior frame of it.
Which is awesome because, well, the only thing that would, I guess, be on the outside from a public standpoint is we would still like to pursue the safety tunnel.
Yeah.
And we have some photos of what that would look like from other projects in Boise and Salt Lake. But it's just it's a 2x4 frame pedestrian tunnel, so it'd be open, and so people can still go back and forth. It wouldn't hinder foot traffic at all. But it just gives the additional reassurance that while we're in the construction phase, that there's just no issues. So there won't be question is our goal. Yeah.
Pretty cool, really.
Preventative. I'd rather do
really
preventative maintenance than corrective maintenance. That's where I see.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
So what's the timetable?
Great question. So, timetable. So to give us enough adequate time, because we still need to do the design for this bracing, and I'd like to also introduce our architect, who's sitting right back here. He's the one who does all the real stuff, I guess. But Richard Dodge with Studio I, we are working with. So moving forward, the timetable will include the design for this temporary bracing with Richard Dodge and also Kyle Dana with Forest Grin. And with that, we plan to get rolling with design right away, but we'd like to give ourselves 1 full year to perform this temporary bracing, which includes the design, bid, and construction. And we're giving ourselves a year, not because we necessarily want a year, but we want to be able to give you a timeline, like a legitimate timeline. I know a lot of people will come up and say, well, I need 2 more weeks, or I need this much time. We want to be able to hold to the dates that we give you, and we also want to be able to get started right away. So the timeline also kind of includes a little contingency, because we really hope to leave today with your support.
Because we can't really move forward unless we pull permits. So if we can't pull permits, we can't finish the project. So the timeline, it's not a singular dependent object. So but as far as the project itself goes, that's the timeline. When the start date is, that's when project timeline starts, really.
Lynn?
Or has already started.
Would you be willing to respond?
Lynn, do you have a copy of this structural report?
No,
yeah.
Lynn Trans from the building department for the city.
Lynn, what would you need to be satisfied that you could issue them a building permit?
Our standard policy for issuing permits on projects that are phased, such as this, is we ordinarily ask them to complete a building permit application that tells us and gives us the value of the total project. We then sell a building permit to them for the total project with the caveat there that they can only proceed with the portions that they have submitted plans to us and got approval for. So, for example, temporary bracing, if they tell us what the project's worth, we'll sell them a building permit that will last for the entire project, but they can only do the work that has been submitted for the temporary bracing if that's the documents that they've submitted to us.
And then you and your staff review periodically what's taking place in this renovation.
Certainly, we would go in and do inspections as standard, as required. But what this allows them to do is it allows them to, again, do it in phases. Whatever portion that they have a design for, they can bring it to us. Probably within a week to 10 days, they get an approval to proceed with whatever they have submitted. But ordinarily what we do is we charge the total dollar value up front instead of, having them come back and repay, for every little portion that they do, add additional fees to it. So,
would you feel more comfortable if you had reviewed this document that they had?
I would certainly, that would be part of their submittal to us for approval to put the temporary bracing in. We're going to want to look at their structural design and review that and proceed. And then again, I heard some mention of them wanting to put a pedestrian tunnel. That's something that would be on public way, so they would have to get a permit, a public right-of-way use permit for that as well. So that would be a separate permit that goes through our Public Works Department.
But that would account for our desire for public safety.
Yes, I believe that should cover the public safety aspect of it, yes.
Questions from anyone else?
How long can the permit, what's the duration of a permit?
Technically, it's 180 days. You have to have a sustained amount of work transpire every 180 days to keep a permit active.
And is there a limit overall on how long it can be active?
We've always been very open with that. As long as people are making progress, we're not out there to say, oh, your time's up. As long as we continue to see progress, things moving forward, we're very amenable to working with any time frame that they have, but we do want to see progress.
Okay, so what I see there is a plan that's looking at 5 years. Is that approximate?
The total, so there is some overlap there with the total project. Total project, I would say 5 years from when we purchased it. So another 3 years. If you're looking at like when would the hotel be open?
So some of those days you have up there are going to be concurrent with other things. Okay.
Right. Once we're at full-blown construction, after we get this temporary bracing in place, construction, of course, this assumes like no delays and things like that. So roughly 1 year for construction. Design before that, we're going to be looking at 6 to 8 months, and that's already started. So, but yeah, that's a fair. Leave it to the guy that's doing the work.
Another question. I know you mentioned you want to make sure you give yourself plenty of time so that you're not coming and asking for more time. Mm-hmm. We have heard, though, comments from a lot of people about the way it currently looks, and some of those people might be concerned about 3 years as being an excessively long time. Is there any way that could be condensed, and if so, to what extent?
Yes.
Yeah. Because those things, so the concerns, then they're concerned that I'm assuming that it's going to fall down on them, or that it's not
aesthetics.
Yeah, that it's currently not.
So yeah, and that's why this first phase of shoring it up and getting it to a stable place, that gets it to a point where we can also start doing that front facade repair and getting that to be the first thing that's fixed. The historical component is saved early on, and that's there, and then the work behind the doors can happen.
Exactly.
And nobody, for lack of, I don't know how else to say it besides, and nobody knows what's going on inside, but the outside looks like everything's
Right.
put together and square.
Yeah.
So
And
what
then the
would be
inside
the
works.
time frame then for it to look excellent from the outside?
Well, we did meet with the Pocatello Development Authority because they expressed interest, and we have a mason that has done unreinforced masonry work before now. So they expressed interest in wanting to help, but they wanted to make sure that this part of the project was good to go. But with that, we could, as soon as the temporary bracing gets put in place, it's a priority to the next step would be then facade restoration. And that's kind of a little bit of a moving target because as part of the final structural reinforcements, we will tie in the exterior brick to a steel frame. So there's a lot of moving parts going on, but the priority from the work scope standpoint would be the temporary bracing, safety, security, and then facade restoration. Get it looking good so it's not an eyesore downtown, and restore that. Because the brick on the facade is by far, it's exceptional, the condition of it. Well, that's what
Yeah.
the mason said.
That's what the expert said.
Yeah. I'll leave it to those guys. But from a timeline standpoint, I would really like to be able to chat with Richard Dodge and our structural engineer to make sure that I'm not putting my foot in my mouth. But I can assure you that from a priority standpoint, the next step would then be for facade improvement, which would include new windows, getting all the brick, because the brick up top is also a priority, any of the loose brick. So that's going to be happening in parallel. A lot of the new grout with the brick, that stuff can start immediately. We don't have to wait for any bracing because that's all happens on the inside.
Can we have Mr. Dodge come give us a timeline on that?
For what you think?
For the exterior facade to be complete?
Reinforcement.
Yeah.
Richard Dodge Studio. I did not play basketball, volleyball, or throw the javelin, so for obvious reasons. I think the timeline is a really tricky thing to nail down because what's really important to know is the phasing of it. So if what you're asking is that you would like us to actually do the new construction, if you will, and all of the historical improvements of the facade before we build anything on the inside, that can be a really tricky proposal because part of that facade, not only restoration but stabilization, relates directly to the new portion of the building that's going to be built in there. So it's a little bit, and I don't mean to sound elusive, but it is a little bit of a tricky question to answer. If we were to circle back to what the overall concern from the public is that, hey, it looks ugly. For instance, we don't like that the top of the brick has come down and it's still kind of, you only see the bottom part of the monarch letters, those kinds of things. That kind of masonry restoration and improvement can take place, but the stabilization of that, the final stabilization of that, is still going to be affected by what's being built on the inside. So now, again, it sounds like I'm trying to avoid answering the question of schedule. If we were to break it into phases and we say that pure stabilization, temporary stabilization, is really our first priority. So stabilization and that tunnel, for instance, to make sure that the public is safe. Personally, it's my opinion that the very next thing that should take place is whenever you work on multi-story buildings on a public way, you want to get safety netting for anything that could fall off that building so that it doesn't, you have the tunnel protected, but you don't want anything to bounce off the tunnel into the road. So you actually, you're really going to take that building away from public view as soon as you start construction on it, because you want netting that's not just, it's going to look like a construction project, for lack of a better way of putting it. So you're going to take that building out of public view really from the time that we say, yeah, we're ready to start working on that facade. And it's going to require some scaffolding up front. You're going to work on some things from the inside, but the brick all has to be laid from the outside. So there's going to be scaffolding. We're going to have netting. We're going to have safety netting and everything else. So does that make a little bit more sense rather than just simply being able to say, hey, when can we have that facade looking like it's perfectly restored? That ultimately won't be until the end of the project, candidly speaking.
So it would be a full 3 years scaffolding looking like.
You wouldn't necessarily have the scaffolding
Okay.
up for that long, but for it to have its final spit and polish, that's where you're going to be. Because of all of the seismic ties that you're going to have to do when you do your new construction. Because we're going to have to go through the brick, and there's steel plates that we put on that will still be historic looking, but that's how you have to tie that building back. And so it doesn't really structurally make sense to try to do that until we're doing the new construction. But there's things that we can do, and I think that's what I would love to work with this council and Lynn to make sure that we're doing. I mean, I would love to get some of that brick laid up on top of the Monarch, for instance, for at the very top, and some of those things that will help dress it up. But again, really, once you start construction, you want that face covered from a safety standpoint, and OSHA really dictates that we have to do many of those things. So.
Great, thank you for your responses. So I guess I'm really looking at what, are we looking at 3 years from today, or 3 years from 90 days down the road, or 3 years from a year from now?
You know what? Because the scale of this project, and it is very unique. The conditions itself are just different. The access is different. I'm based on everything that we know, I would say 3 years is. It's gonna be an estimate. I'm much more comfortable focusing on this first phase of bracing and really nailing down all those details. And then once we get through that, taking it to the next step so we can, I don't want time pressure to force our hand to do something unsafe is what I'm worried about. And I'm nervous that if we are under that time pressure, it'll force us to make a decision that isn't for our best interest or the public's. So if we could focus on the first phase being a year, I would say an estimate is 3 years, but that's really it's my best estimate. Yeah.
Do you have anything else you'd like to present?
I think if I might add one more comment to that, Tiffany, what makes that difficult to nail down is that part of that's dependent on this council. For instance, right now there's a condemnation order in place, and so until that, there's certain things that our hands are completely tied unless that's removed. And so because we can't tell you when that's going to be taken off, that's partly why we're looking at that year. Does it take a year to do the bracing? Certainly not. But what we don't know is when can we get to that, the demo permit and the phased permit, and when does that condemnation order go away in order to be able to move forward on things like the tunnel and the temporary stabilization, while we concurrently then are working on the design. And we have preliminary designs that have already been taking place. So it's not like that we say right now, okay, now we're running, if we were to get the go-ahead from this meeting. There's already been a great deal of work that's been taking place, and we have concepts and everything else in place. What is the unknown is what then this council will allow us to do as far as moving forward with the removal of the condemnation order and the phase permit as we work with Lynn and his group. So.
I'm unclear what phase 1 is going to encompass.
Phase 1 is based upon the recommendations from the structural evaluation, which are these 2 bulleted items.
Provide temporary bracing of the east, south, and north masonry walls, and then provide and maintain safety protection barriers required by OSHA. And so basically, phase 1 is turning it into just simply a construction site of a building that is in disrepair. Simply is that, and making sure that the worker safety inside is in place, because it's a construction zone. It's a building that needs work still. So that's phase 1, is getting it to a place where workers can appropriately work in a safe environment.
And mainly doing the temporary bracing.
Yeah. The temporary bracing is that's directly tied to making it a safe work environment. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I might interject, that also might provide a little bit more information. We tasked the structural engineer with this, what we call the phase 1 evaluation, to make sure that we satisfied the questions that were taking place from this council in the previous meeting. Their phase 2 that will start pending the results of this discussion is to provide us with the details and the calculations of exactly what that seismic bracing is, both for the unreinforced masonry walls that are kind of hanging up there right now because of what's been destroyed by the fire, but also tying in the existing framing to the unreinforced masonry walls below on that main level. So we really see that those are the primary things, and that would be considered temporary bracing until then the final structure, which will handle all of this seismic or the lateral bracing for the building, will actually be transferred into the new construction that will take place within the shell of that building. Does that help you a little bit more address that?
Yeah, simply the phase 1 is design and engineering for the temporary bracing, maintaining the OSHA standards, which we have to follow for construction sites, and then also the safety tunnel, or pedestrian tunnel, which would address the public safety issue. And our goal is to perform the items necessary to revoke the condemnation. Because until we have that condemnation notice revoked, funding after phase 1 will become challenging if we can't find a balance identify the criteria necessary to revoke the condemnation. And if we could do that, that would be superior, because we would really love to be able to pursue that scope and do what's necessary to move forward.
I know you'd like an answer from us on that right now. I feel like we need to have our official review the report before we can officially say. So I don't know that we can make any
because we haven't
official determination at this moment.
read it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Totally.
Well, and I think we're going to be in phases of response to you too.
Okay.
We just phase the whole thing.
Well, until we've seen the full report, we're not really in a position to be responsive.
This isn't Washington, D.C.
But I believe, but sometimes you do what is necessary. And we received this because there were people who felt like other buildings were in jeopardy or people on the street were in jeopardy. And so our due diligence requires us to make sure that we're following the procedure that's going to take care of those concerns. And my assumption, it could be way out there now, is that we cannot remove the condemnation proceedings until we know that it's been reinforced adequately by engineering principles that allows you to move forward.
That is contained in that report, right?
Well, I think it is, but we got to make sure it is, because 2 lines out of a report does not give us a sense of it. And we're probably none of us in a place where we could review it. So
you just don't know Bina. She is so talented.
Okay, Bina, can you do
It's
an
like the
engineering?
summary of the Mueller report.
Yeah.
2 words, that's it.
So what I'm saying is, I think we're going to have to be in a state of negotiation with each other. I think gut level, we can say we want to work with you to get the condemnation removed. At gut level, the only way that satisfies that is knowing that the concern that was brought to us has been addressed. I think that the appearance of the building is going to be in a state of compromise for a long time because it's intricately tied to the whole construction project. But the main thing is we need to be able to assure the adjoining landowners that that building has been secured, and going forward now, the construction will be in a secured building. And that's my own assessment. I'm not an engineer, but I just think that that's kind of the practical analysis. Get us the full report. Let our building department people review it. Let them consult back with us, and then we can make a decision about, go ahead and get it reinforced and let's move forward.
Because time is of the essence with anything. I guess I would stick my neck out a little bit farther and say something like this. I would approve the removal of the condemnation procedure subject to Lynn Transtrom reviewing that report and him being satisfied that we are to the point where we can do that. I mean, I don't want us to have to come back in a month if you could be doing some good work between now and then.
But I don't think he can remove the condemnation.
Well, I'm saying we can do it,
Yeah.
subject to his being satisfied with that report. Please.
If I might interject something, I think one of the things is that we are at a little bit of a pickle because there's certain things that need to be done in order to remove the condemnation order that can't be done until we can get a permit.
Right.
And we're not getting the adequate permitting until we can get the condemnation order. So it's kind of a circle and that's no reflection on this council or Lynn or his group. It's one of those kind of funky things that this is kind of stuck in no man's land, if you will. And so we want to just make sure we're doing everything on our side to assure those who have made comments, and perhaps most importantly this council. We now have 2 structural reports that, ironically enough, the one that was done on I think 3 days after the fire, basically says the same thing that this one does, that what remains there is pretty structurally stable. Yes, it needs some seismic upgrades. It's an unreinforced building, as are most of the buildings downtown. And I'm not asking you not to read it. This is not my bar summary of the Mueller report. You only get the redacted version.
Our very last study session, we had a very thorough analysis of seismic events here in Pocatello. And it's far more daunting than just one building.
It is, and it's almost doomsday sometimes it feels like when we're talking about these old buildings. So anyway, so that's where we're kind of stuck in that in that cycle.
Lynn, you had a comment?
Yes, if I may. As far as removal of the condemnation notice that's on that, it would be my interpretation of it as once they've submitted us a plan and obtained a permit, and that plan has been approved and they obtain a permit, and part of the condition of approval of that permit is we're going to want to make sure that we have addressed public safety and safety of the adjacent structures. At that point in time, it's now a construction site, and I can see no reason for the condemnation notice to be on it while it's under construction. So I think that we could remove that condemnation notice as soon as we, one, have a set of plans submitted to us telling us what they're wanting to do and what they're going to do that addresses the public safety as well. And 2, they purchase a permit to start the construction of the building. And again, we'll work with them in any phase as many phases as they want to do that. But once it's a building under construction, I can see no reason for it to have a condemnation notice on it.
So that shouldn't take any council action?
No.
That's actually, I believe, a duty that's charged to the building department, yes.
So, council, what would you like done?
I would like to have our building official review this information and report back to us, if that gives you enough time, next week when we have our work session clarification meeting, and let us know kind of where we're at.
Certainly, we can review their structural and, work with them as to what they want to submit for a plan and get the building permit process.
And hopefully they can get that plan to you ASAP so that you have time to look it over and report back to us next week.
And again, there's a substantial cost that's going to be involved in that. As I said, our standard policy is when we do phased construction, say a shell only, things of that nature, we require the full permit fee up front, and then we just release portions of the building that we have plans and approvals for. So. But that is a substantial cost for that permit on a project of this size.
So you're saying that, so depending on what we plan to do with the total project, and the permit fee is a percentage of that?
Correct.
Other questions or comments
I've got a really quick one. I was probably one of the few people who probably don't know what your vision is for the whole building. If you can inform me on that, that would be great. And the other question, I think I must have heard you say something about your funding is, do you have it for the whole project completed, or do you have the funding for the whole project, or is it for phase one is secured funding right now?
For phase one, we have secured funding. We work with a variety of different investors on our projects that we have the funding support to execute the project.
And they're highly motivated, especially because of where the project is located.
The opportunity zone.
So things are...
That side of it's great. The one thing that even the PDA had a comment that they were reluctant to help us with is because because of the condemnation and making sure that any questions with public safety get resolved first. So all of those things, getting clarity today is really going to move mountains for us tomorrow. So given that we leave today with smiles and we're not dream killers like we talked about last time, yes, all the funding is good to go, but it really is contingent upon getting the condemnation revoked.
And then afterwards, it'll be a boutique hotel, smaller as far as hotels are concerned. 14 rooms about, and then a butterfly exhibit on the ground floor that's a public butterfly exhibit. And it goes all the way up through the middle of the building. Working with the zoo and the Monarch Mapper program for the butterfly release and saving the monarchs. And
it's very cool.
Pretty wicked cool. It's hard to explain it in a way that really does it justice, but it's a cool space.
So people could rent the rooftop for an event.
Yep.
Yeah. In our design, we have even a little mini golf, little putt golf on the roof.
It's interesting what you can tie in to an old building like this, and what you can use that's there in place. The old character of it just gives itself the setting. So all you have to do is not mess it up.
Yeah.
And then it's a beautiful space and a beautiful location, and then just set it up in a way that people can use.
Yeah.
Places like Black Hawk, Colorado, and some of those places, they've gone into the old portions of these mining towns, and the facade is the same, and you walk through the inside and it's a modern, up-to-date casino. I mean, it's available, it can be done.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
One other thing, if I could mention, when they submit a plan for our review, and we're talking about public safety, that plan will go out for review for not just the building department. Our engineering department will have the ability to look at that and issue their comments. Our sanitation department, our water pollution control. This goes through the full gamut of departments that are that would be affected. Will have some effect on the outcome of the building. So it's not just the building department that does this approval and review of their plans. It's all the city departments that are dealing with construction and public safety.
Very good. Council, do you want to put something in the form of a motion, essentially, or just move forward?
I think it's in their hands and Lynn's hands, and they wondered if they need to get it going.
Do you feel comfortable with that, ladies?
I understood that Lynn was going to come and update you though next week at the...
Yeah, after he's reviewed that.
After looking at the report.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your efforts. I'm excited for you.
Yes, thank you.
I'm excited for Pocatello.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you guys so much.
We'll now turn to agenda item number 7, patrol vehicle per police officer update. Pocatello Police Department, boy, got the big guys today. Pocatello Police Department staff is requesting council guidance to move forward with the lease purchase of 21 fully equipped patrol vehicles. There are several options that staff would like to review to fund the vehicle purchase. Please.
Members of the council, President Johnston, thank you for taking the time to meet with us on this. My name is Roger Shine, the Deputy Chief of Pocatello Police Department. I have Cliff Kelly here, he's the captain of the patrol division, and Tom Kirkman from the fleet end of things. So since we met last time from our clarification meeting, there were several questions that the council did ask. We did a bunch of research and we found the answers for those. Some of the questions were, was it going to affect our insurance? The answer was no, we have an umbrella policy. The other question that was asked about fuel consumption, and it's going to be a wash as far as that goes. We're going to drive as many probably miles as we are right now. It's just a matter of dividing those miles up on the cars. Right now, from talking with Tom, we are driving right out of our warranties because we are putting so many miles on those cars. So it's actually costing more to do things the way we're doing business right now. So to do business as normal would actually end up costing more in the long run because we're driving out of our warranties. The other question posed was, what are other agencies doing? So we took some time, we researched that, and just about every agency from Idaho Falls down to St. George has car per officer.
Do you have a list of that, of which ones do and which ones don't?
Captain Kelly did some research on that. Essentially, our research shows that every agency, I believe but Blackfoot has them. Idaho State Police, Bingham Sheriffs, Bonneville Sheriffs, Idaho Falls Police, Chubbuck, Bannock County. We talked to, what's that?
Twin Falls?
We just looked from Idaho Falls down the I-15 corridor of basically what are our direct comparisons going to be. When we looked at that, we looked at who are we also competing with for hiring. Because that is an incentive. If you go to hire and recruit people, that is an incentive. And one of our direct competitors, Idaho Falls, does offer that. So when you look at our demographics, our city size, our police department size, we're pretty identical to the things that we do as they do. As far as Utah goes, they just, that's how they operate down there. They have a car per officer for Ogden PD, Layton, Cottonwood Heights, St. George.
Yeah, they said that every agency, essentially from Davis County south past to Provo, for sure, has car per officer, and then it's continued south, and I think it's a majority of them south of Provo, but it's almost every agency because they found it's a more efficient, effective way to operate with their vehicles.
So the other question came up in reference to how long have we been working on? We've been working on this program here ever since I started working here in 1995. So I guess if we would have planted the shade tree back in '95, we would have had a big giant shade tree to have some lunch underneath and enjoy the time. But
you're using the wrong phrase to have your donuts.
Well, sure. I enjoy a good donut just like everybody else. I'm not in my eating window though right now, so I can't have it.
I'm just kidding.
So the thing is that when's this? If we didn't plant it back then, when's the next best time to plant it? Well, the answer is today. Because then we're going to be looking 5 years down the road from now going, we're going to have this same issue. We do have it within our plan, our budget, our current budget for rotation. We're working on next year's budget right now. We have approximately $260,000 into that line item for replacement vehicles. So that would be something that we would keep in our budget year after year after year. That replaces 5 to 6 vehicles. And that would put the rotation out there for those vehicles so that we wouldn't, if we were to buy these all at once, it's not going to be something that we're going to have to replace all at once. We'd have a plan with fleet in place to replace the 5 to 6 a year so that it wouldn't be a hit to the taxpayers, wouldn't be a hit to the department or to the council to have to come back to that situation again. So the thing is with that, we do have money in our budget this year for vehicles, and I know that was Councilman Bray's one of the issues that you brought up. So we would like to use that money towards this so that it would be less out of capital contingency and reserves to get that done. So what we would like to do and to move forward with this is use that money that's in our existing budget plus a little bit out of capital, plus a little bit out of the reserves. And when we looked at this as a city, as a department, we want to look at the other aspects of the city too. We don't want to take a big chunk out of anything. We want to split it up so that we understand there's other needs from other city departments, other areas within the city that might need something out of those funds. So we want to make sure that there are some in there for those funds, looking at the big picture of things. So that's something that we took into consideration.
And I know what an umbrella policy is, but when you increase what your umbrella is covering, it looks like you're increasing your insurance, because you're going to have 21 more cars that's going a distance home and back, and that has to give greater exposure. So, you know, I understand there's an umbrella, but 21 more vehicles for collision insurance and all those kind of things with it, I think I just can't see how there's not an increase in insurance, but
I think the major spoke with Ruth, and we spoke with her as well about we do have an umbrella policy that covers them. Anytime that you're going to have there's pros and cons to everything, right?
Yeah.
And so I think anytime you have a city vehicle that's traversing the city, anytime you're open for liability. So, you know, that's one of the concerns with an officer per vehicle is, you know, you open yourself up for a little more liabilities when they're on their way home, driving back and forth. But in what our research has been, as far as the fleet end goes, we're kind of neutral on this because there's pros and cons for all of it. It seems like the biggest thing that we're noticing right now through our fuel records is, you know, they put on us upwards of 20,000 miles a year on a car, and we're paying for a 36,000 mile warranty that goes 3 years, and we're burning through that in a year and a half, you know. And so that's one of the big issues that you see with this officer per car is they call it hot seating, where you get one guy and then he just jumps out and the next one goes, the next one goes. And we see that in our maintenance schedules, like for our snow plows, for instance, when we get on 24-hour shifts. You know, one shift will come in and run it, and the next guy will get in, the last guy checked the oil, and then he runs his shift and gets out, and the next, he checked it. And before you know it, you're in a problem. You know, not saying that's what happens, but this is some of the issues that can happen with hot seating.
Well, no, I really appreciate the fact that this would be extending our warranty to be legitimate for a longer period. I really have the capacity to understand that this puts us in maybe a 7-year replacement cycle rather than a 5-year replacement cycle. Those
7 to 8.
7 to 8 years, okay. Because we've been in a 5-year pretty much.
That was one of the issues that I talked with the major about the other day is anytime you buy a large quantity at once, there's always that concern that you're going to have to buy a large quantity later on down the roads. But it sounds like they've got a pretty good plan in place of how they're going to rotate those vehicles through.
Well, sometimes you just got to stay in your seat longer.
Yeah.
And that's,
I mean, that could be a reality, is that you press a couple of those vehicles a little longer just to satisfy that 7-year.
Well, and this gives us the ability to do that because we drop the mileage per car total, so we get to extend the life of each. And with that plan, we would have some that would rotate out maybe at 7, some at 8, some at 9, and then we'd be back right on our regular rotation schedule. And I think that's totally feasible to do that and still have quality equipment and vehicle, because single use and the mileage and the use on it is so much lower for the duration of its life. So
the other issue too that we have is the ability to be able to respond to more than one critical incident at a time. Right now, with the vehicles that we have, that would be my concern. Oftentimes, if we're calling people out, and I've done this, I know Captain Kelly's done this, as well as several other officers, they've gotten the call from home, they've driven by where they need to be, they come to the police station, they gather their equipment and their gear, they load it up, then they drive back to the incident. So this would give us the ability to be able to respond a lot faster directly to the incident with all of the needed equipment in the vehicles, rather than having to come and load it up where you might miss a piece of equipment or something. And we've seen of late with the incidents that we've dealt with how important it is to have that proper equipment with you when you need it, because you need it right then and there. So.
And that's truly our overarching goal as well, is to increase the responsiveness of our officers. These other things we've talked about, they're ancillary things that are nice to have, but the overarching goal is to make our department more responsive and be able to respond to more things in the community and take care of the community on a higher level.
Is there a possibility, and I'm just thinking outside the box right now, that having a vehicle for every officer, that there would be a little increased pay for somebody to be the on-call person when they're off and not have to, we operate short staff sometimes.
No, as far as that goes, no, because we don't tell them that they're on call. Okay. If we call somebody and they're not available, they're not available. We do have on call for detective on the weekends, and senior staff is on call on the weekends. But we don't have a mandatory on call for patrol, so that would not be an issue.
Okay.
I think that's going to be a key part of this, if moving forward, is setting down the rules of how that works.
We've been really good at when we've called people. I mean, I can't tell you how great our people are. When we call them and we tell them we need them, they're there.
Okay.
That's not something as far as being on an on-call status is. It's just we called and they've responded.
I have a question. The department has told us about all of the pros from their perspective on responsiveness. You mentioned some of them from the fleets department, but I also heard you mention there were also some cons. Could you just let us know if there are any of those cons that you've identified that we should just be aware of or prepared for?
Absolutely. Councilman Bray touched on one of them. I think anytime you have a take-home vehicle, you increase your liability, because that person's in the seat longer, they're driving home back and forth in that car. Fuel consumption can be higher because in some of our research we've seen is you may have an officer that has a vehicle, or any government worker. Well, then they may live 30 miles away, and so they can buy a property cheaper and then have a longer commute. So one of the rules that most of the cities have done for car or officer per vehicle is you have to live within the jurisdiction, and I think they've got fail-safes put together for that. And then there's also tax requirements, for take-home vehicles. Our vehicle use policy is you have to submit that to tax, but that's a pretty easy thing. And then the biggest one is what we've already talked about, is some of the capital. It's a big purchase up front. But on our end, when we analyze this, and I've spoken with Teresa Kyle, our fleet manager, a lot over this, is on the fleet side, we feel there's more pros than cons to it. And so I think what it boils down for your decision is more policy and level of service, because I think the benefits as far as the fleet end goes, outweighs the negatives.
And I can comment really quickly on the length somebody lives, the distance somebody lives away from the department. We do have a policy already set because we do have a process where officers are sharing cars on their days they work. They get to take them home, but they have to live within 15 miles of the city to be able to take advantage of that. And that I could foresee would remain in place if we went to full car per officer. And then as far as what was the other one? Oh,
tax.
The tax. With the tax issue, the way I understand it, if it's a marked vehicle, which all these would be, they are exempt from the taxing of those as a benefit to the officer. So they wouldn't be subject to that.
Well, you guys are under some special requirements. Don't you usually carry a weapon with you, and you're kind of sworn to intervene when you see something?
Well, if they're in their marked unit, yes.
Yeah, and they're driving home or they're driving to work, and that has happened. So officers that are driving home come across an accident, they take care of it. They take immediate action, or they're on their way to work and something comes in, a hot call comes in, a domestic in progress, or an injury accident, or somebody going through a mental health crisis, they respond to it, and that has happened. So that really helps with that immediate response too. So and there will be marked units with lights and sirens, so that meets that requirement.
And I would like to ask, I guess, too, for in terms of the liability aspect of every time, an officer at a car goes home, historically, have we had any incidents that will help us foresee what the likelihood of that might be in terms of, does it happen often?
As far
is
as
it very rare?
citywide for the take-home vehicle policy, it's pretty minimal.
Pretty minimal.
And we've been taking vehicles home for the last at least 3 years on this program. And we haven't had any incident to this point that was subject to an officer who was off duty with their vehicle being in an accident. Now we've had accidents with vehicles with officers on duty. That it happens, and we have maybe 5 to 6 per year.
Which is probably part of the.
Yeah, that's just part of doing business. We understand that.
We just had one where a person ran a red light.
In front of our officer.
So.
2 nights ago.
Gould Street.
Yeah. Fortunately, they're both. Everybody involved was okay. So that's the good thing. So.
And you picked one up.
What's that?
And you executed it on the warrant.
True.
Well, those things happen.
That's not how we necessarily like to find warrants.
And again, as far as on the fleet end, I'm kind of a nerd for this stuff. So I read a study, they called it the windshield study, the university did, and they say if a fleet vehicle, if one of your customers gets in a vehicle and the windshield's broken, they have a tendency to not take as good care of the vehicle because if they get in that, it's just an old piece of junk. And so I think where this officer per vehicle could be really good, and that's where through our research, we've seen a lot of the benefits as they take ownership in the vehicle, they maintain them better. It's just, when it's not running 24 hours a day, it just works. And I think they touched on it too, is, at the end of the shift, you're pulling stuff out, the other guy's got to throw his stuff in and something gets forgot, so there's definitely a lot of pros to this program, definitely.
And I think one of the key things we keep discussing in our meetings earlier is the officer retention and hiring. We're facing, issues on that. So if this helps in that way, that's a good initiative.
We're 5 down right now, and I just got the numbers from Sergeant Daniels. We have 67 people that are testing for us on April the 22nd. The last time we tested, there was approximately 100. We're down about 30% of people that are applying for us. And when I tested, there was 350 people that tested for us. So the numbers are gradually decreasing. So this would help. And the option that we like the best is option 5 on that, where it's using our current budget plus some capital contingency plus some reserves plus some end of year money to take care of that. I have talked to Rich Steele and legal in reference to this, and he has said that the Bancorp would be considered a sole source because they provide everything. It's a one-stop shop. So that would not be an issue with going. There's no penalty for early payment, so we could pay it within a year, and we would be done, and then we would just be on our normal rotation with our current budget, not requesting any additional.
That's another benefit as well. Upfitting emergency vehicles is difficult. It's hard to find people that do it, and hard to find people that do a good job at it. So buying them as a turnkey option is definitely a good way to go.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much for the information.
We're probably tasked with somewhat narrowing the options here.
Yeah, it looks like that last one's the only one we really want to consider.
I like option 5.
Yeah, I do too.
Option 2 is pretty good too.
Well, without finance here, it's hard to do that.
Well, yeah, we won't make a decision right now. But thank you very much.
If they come back to us, they're going to have to come back to us with a hard proposal.
So meaning they need to come back with one of the options listed here?
Yeah, that's what I would.
Well, we have to decide.
Okay.
And I'm recommending 5 because that's the best, in my opinion, for the good of the city as well as the department.
So are we able to make that motion today or no?
Well, we could. Some people want to wait and do it in the budget process, but it could be done today. I mean, I like to get things done.
I don't mind moving forward with this today.
Okay, make a motion. Yeah.
What is our total amount? We don't have finance here, but what our total amount that's in, is that all that's in our capital contingency?
No, I can tell you from the last, I've got the numbers from the last time they presented. So the last time, because I wrote them down, but we're in there. So there's a total of 1,366,524 that was in capital contingency. Reserves at 1,790,949 plus the $252,000 plus from video services. If we went with this, there would still be approximately $2.3 million left in reserves. So.
Did you write down the breakdown? Because in part of our capital contingency, some of it was restricted and some of it was not as restricted. Did you write that number down?
So the 1,366,524 was directly out of capital contingency. That was the number that was for capital purchases. The 1,790,949 was out of the general reserves. And then there was the $252,403 that was out of the video services. That was
need to be put back.
That was going to be put back. That 252 might be what you're talking about.
No, I was talking about it. Do you guys remember in capital contingency, some of it could be?
I don't remember. They had more of a list than what we wrote down.
Right.
Those may have been the numbers that were restricted.
So what we were asking for was 546 from one, 546 from another, plus the 200 that's in our budget, and then we would take care of the rest within some of our savings with the end of the year. Now that number we could change if we needed to take 273, which would be half from reserves. That would give us 381 at the end of the year, which we could cover that too. Either way we break that down. So we have a bunch of different options within option 5 of how to break that up.
I think it's in our best interest to move forward, get this done.
I agree.
One last question. So Fleet is getting engaged with the police department, their cars and all that. So we're going to move to that scale of efficiency with these cars too.
Right now, currently the police EVT, the emergency vehicle technician, as well as the fire EVT are both in the union, and so we're working right now of how that dynamic's going to work. But yeah, long term, that's definitely where we want to be.
Okay.
Where we want to manage, and we've talked about this before on our fleet management software. We're going to track everything, and then it'll actually run a model, and it'll give you replacement criteria for everything, and so.
Through AssetWorks.
Yeah, I think we're already using
So when all these efficiencies go in, we don't want to hear about what the chart says you should drive it another year.
Well, I think there's what the chart says and what the practicality is. I mean, we need to sit down and have a practical hard look at things and going, can we make this happen?
Yeah.
And there's the other option too, is that one thing we do is we get a lot of bang out of our buck for these vehicles, because if patrol is done with it, what we'll do is we'll assign them to the school resource officers who drive them to and from school or to and from the juvenile detention center. Code enforcement, yes. And so they're getting a long life out of it. We just don't go patrol. Yeah. We're done, right? They get
squeeze
recycled.
Every drop of life out.
And then after you guys are through with them, it ends up in parks or something.
Usually, yeah.
They do go to other departments.
We're hoping to stave some of that off, because we want to if it costs more to maintain it,
Well,
we don't want to.
Part of our plan was we got 66 vehicles we should be getting rid of.
We're going to right size, yeah.
And we're working with Fleet on that too, on what's the most efficient and most effective way to do things. So.
Right.
Okay.
Well, President Johnson?
Yes.
Before you make your motion, can I ask one more question? You said within option 5 there's some flexibility with those numbers and we can shift some things around, and you mentioned maybe dropping the amount from reserves and that you could cover potentially with savings at the end of the year. What about dropping the capital contingency amount? Is that
flip-flopping it?
Yeah.
You could flip-flop it.
My concern about making this decision today, I think this sounds like a very good policy and I support the idea of it, but there is the concern about we're in budget development and there's some other things we need to look at with those capital contingency funds. So that's the part of this that makes me nervous. So I'm wondering how much flexibility you feel there is with, could you cover from savings some of that amount?
I think the main focus is that regardless of how we do it, that there is a substantial amount that we could potentially help with.
So are you asking,
with our budget, and
instead of taking some out of reserves, you're saying to take some out of, instead of taking the additional 273 from reserves, to switch that to capital contingency, so that we took 546 out of reserves, out of the bigger chunk, and then left more in capital contingency?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do
just
that.
as a possibility.
Has our finance department said which of these options they feel is the most prudent for the city to do?
5. Because we're using part of our actual existing budget for within FY19, and those budget. The thing about that, and from speaking with finance on that, is this is what capital contingency is for. It's for one-time purchases for capital items. And also, the monies that we're talking about are there. They're existing right now. They're not really tying the city's hands for 5 years down the road, which when you look at options 1 and 2, it's saying, well, 5 years from now, you need to have $282,000 in capital contingency to pay for it in year 4. And if you don't, that's why you have to sign the non-appropriations clause, so that they can take those assets back. And that's something that we don't want to do. We want to go ahead and get it done while we have those monies that are available now. But yeah, we have that flexibility.
I think that's a great question that Councilwoman Adamson asked too, because it'd make me feel a lot more comfortable to know within this option, I mean, that they're recommending option 5, but also within this option, what do they feel is the best breakdown of the figures?
And we can work with them on that, on however they want to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because maybe, dropping the amount from capital contingency and making the higher amount the reserves, maybe that's not the best solution, but I would like to hear what their recommendation is on that.
Well, I think maybe the way to look at this is, as I read this, option 5 minimizes the impact on 2020.
Yes, on our overall budget.
So we're looking at minimizing the long-term impact on future budgets.
Yeah, correct.
And so the formula that would minimize the impact on future budgets is probably what we're looking at. And so we can let finance come to us with that proposal. But we really see the necessity or the urgency of getting this done. We see the urgency of paying for it as fast and as much as we can with the minimum impact next year.
We just need your authorization to move forward with that.
Okay.
We're good then?
We're ready.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve option number 5 upon finance's suggestion on how to do the breakdown. And approve the officer per car.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there additional discussion?
So the motion is that we
approve option number 5 for now and have finance give us a breakdown of, give them a breakdown of whether to use reserves or capital contingency, which is the best way to break that down.
No, I just had a comment. I still have a really hard time, because it is such a large dollar amount, 100% going, but it sounds like everybody else is. So if that's the direction it's going, I do think 5 is the best, so I would support that, but just want to make that comment. Not that you don't have my support, but it's just a lot of
duly recognized, Councilwoman.
Yeah.
Please call the roll, Ruth.
Manon?
Yes.
Cheatham?
Yes.
Adamson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Lurick?
Yes.
Johnston?
Yes. I want to hit the gavel on that one. Motion passed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Thanks. We'll now turn to agenda item number 8, City Employee Benefit Update. You don't look like Heather.
Love the boots.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I'm filling in. Thank you.
Okay. We will be,
Joyce just got it.
it's changed a lot from the agenda, but let's go right ahead and do what we need to do.
I need to turn the projector.
Heather's in the negotiations for Jerry's problem.
Question. I'm planning to complete this agenda before we adjourn. Is that all right with everyone?
Yeah.
I'm sorry you don't get the nice drink like I have. But Boost. He's my new best friend.
Boosted?
That's your boost.
When we asked her if she fixed that question,
Come back up. We do the
she said what she was saying was way out.
We'll do that after the meeting.
She said it was all good.
Laura, you are on.
Getting close to lunchtime, Jim.
She's Lynette.
So,
I'm sorry.
I'm Lynette Sampson, compensation specialist for HR. I'm filling in for Laura and Heather. Laura's in interviews and Heather's in fire negotiations. So I'm here to talk about budget guidance for the remainder of the city benefits, which are Delta Dental. Looks like we have a blended 2% renewal decrease. These are the amounts.
Did I hear that correctly? A decrease?
Thanks for the good news.
We're getting older, we have less teeth.
These are the rates. It shows FY19 and then what the FY 2020 rates will be. I guess I'm just looking for council to adopt or accept the numbers.
I would gladly accept
Yes,
a
it's a
decrease,
decrease,
so
yes.
I move that we accept the
Second.
presented information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Rick did it.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Council President, I'm sorry, I've been trying to get this set up, so I have no idea what the motion was. Or
We moved
anything.
to accept, I moved to accept the presented information.
Delta Dental renewal.
For Delta Dental.
And Rick seconded.
And it was seconded by who? I split myself up, it was Keith Riggs.
We'll ask you to call the roll when you are ready.
Okay, I'm ready, sir.
Go ahead.
Adamson,
Yes.
Cheatham,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Lurick,
Yes.
Manon,
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, now the moral to that story is, it's real easy to do business when you bring us decreases.
Yeah, that's important.
When we see the little discounts and all that.
So then the next thing we need action on is EAP. The rates are remaining the same.
Okay, well, they're not going up, so that's a good thing too, I guess.
That's equivalent to a
Well, it's-
decrease, right?
Council President Johnston,
Yes.
I make a motion to approve the 2020 EAP.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Ruth, please call the roll.
Made by Lurick, seconded by
It was a tie. Maybe Rick?
Lurick,
Yes.
Cheatham,
Yes.
Adamson,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Manon,
I just have a quick question. Can you remind me what the acronym stands for EAP?
Employee Assistance Program.
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes. Motion carries. Do you have anything else?
I do. Ruth, did you preload my presentation? No?
no.
Okay.
Okay.
You have to request
Are we going to
break.
agenda item number 9?
Yes, but I need to run and grab the presentation,
Oh, no, we have the slides?
the slides.
We've got it.
You've got them?
Yeah.
They have them, but they're not on that laptop for the citizens to view.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll need to go grab those. I apologize. I was also in fire union negotiations.
I'll go, you go ahead and talk.
And talk. Okay.
Is there anyone over there that knows it?
Do you want my copy? Here, take mine.
Well, no, we're talking
No.
about so the public
The
here.
public.
Oh, so the
Televised.
This network in.
The public, thank you for being with us.
I don't think she does sign into that.
This
Okay.
is when the council president has to do a song and dance while we stall, right?
I'm not dancing today.
How about singing?
I don't sing very well today either.
So who's gonna run and grab?
questions for
I'm so
me?
sorry.
Pardon?
Did you have questions for me on the vehicle?
No, we left it so that you could determine the best way to utilize those funds
Okay.
based on what we...
Well, the big thing about all the capital contingency and the reserves, this is an appropriate use for it. But if you think there's other things out there that you're going to need it for, and you use it all in this one shot, that'll be it, you know?
Yeah, we're not going to do that.
Okay, so, and he didn't provide me, the last thing I had heard was $350,000 a year for 5 years on the lease. So I
It's changed a lot.
It was a different.
But I'll look at it and then I'll let you all know.
Okay.
This is a 15-pager.
But you have 1.7 million in excess reserves in the general fund, which is quite large.
Yeah.
But I've heard words that some of it might be tagged for other purposes, so I'm trying to
Make sure we're not over.
over-tag this in.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
You bet.
Well, we're saving that for the new police chief.
Saving that for the new police chief. What, the balancing of it all?
On our agenda, it was option number 5, if you want to go look at
Okay,
it. And then
yeah.
if you have any recommendations for us, that's what the,
They were going to
that's
use,
how it left off.
they were going to use
option
200,000.
5, that's the one you all approved?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We
Then
felt
I'll-
like it was better to get it passed and not have to always before us.
But we want your recommendation on the breakdown within option 5.
Okay. and I'll look at
Particularly
that.
of the reserve and the capital contingency fund, how much to take from each.
And
Yeah,
how much
okay.
from their savings at the end and,
Well, the only problem with saying I'm going to have savings at the end is we don't know that until we get to the end.
right.
You know, it's kind of like counting your chickens before they're hatched, you know. I don't have any problem saying we're going to take it from reserves and things like that because that's concrete. I know the dollars are there and available. And yes, they tend to be the bigger of the two groups that tend to build reserves for us because of not filling positions. But I'm a little cautious in counting something that I don't have yet.
So we could take it contingency and reserves with the codicil that whatever
Yeah.
they have left at the end of their year kicks back in
Well,
and
kick
replenishes
back
that
into
fund.
the reserves.
Right.
Yeah.
So
To
you
make
take
up-
it from reserves, and that way you know it's there.
Mhm.
And then, and contingency, of course, would be there.
To use
Whatever we have,
more
it won't
from
build
reserves.
unless we move dollars there for it. But yes, I mean, that's one way of looking at it. Yeah, they have excess reserves. But yes, of the general fund departments, they are the bigger contributor to building reserves.
Okay, we'll return now to compensation consultant update.
Thank you. Lynette Sampson, Compensation Specialist. I'm here to talk about our compensation consultant that we currently have. We have a third-party consultant. The city's had one since the late 90s at least. So I just want to give you an update on that process. So the city currently uses BDPA. They're a firm out of Boise. This is who the city has been with since the late 90s. BDPA developed the current hybrid compensation program. They did this by meeting with staff, looking at market, developing new job descriptions and the pay scale. And they also facilitated the development of the city's performance management system, and they provided guidance to the city's task force on that system. BDPA hosts our Northwest Data Exchange. It is a market data program that we do use for comping our positions. They collect data from Idaho, northern Utah, some Washington, Montana, that's all factored in. The information that they provide is primarily other governmental organizations. The city currently pays $2,500 for access to the Northwest Data Exchange that comes out of HR's budget. In addition, when new positions come online or when a staffing request is submitted for a position reevaluation, after I do my analysis, we send it to BDPA just to make sure that we're placing it correctly in our table. We pay $100 every time we submit one of those to BDPA. They announced their retirement last fall. So they are continuing to host the data exchange, and they do continue to provide feedback to us on our placements, but they eventually will no longer do that.
So our option then is to
find somebody else. So just a little bit of background on the job audit process, if you're not familiar with it. So I do a review of a job description if a staffing request comes in or if a new position is wanted. Research job descriptions, write one, send the job description to the supervisor and sometimes the employee. And if it's for a reevaluation, we're asking what significant things have changed in this job description. What are you doing now that's not in there, or what are you not doing that's in there, and what kind of change needs to be made? In some instances, this includes a site visit to shadow a position. When I place a position on the scale, I look at its current placement, the positions above and below it in the scale, look at the changes in the job description. They have to be significant changes that significantly change the function of the position for the position to move in the placement of the pay scale. And these are things we look at. Is it increased responsibility, complexity? Is the focus program specific or citywide? And even though employees don't like to hear it, more work of the same or lower type of work does not increase what you get paid. We had a question about market, and since our pay scale is a market pay scale, the BDPA has outlined what market is in what's called the Salary Administrative Guidelines. They weren't formally adopted with the adoption of the hybrid because they were for a market-based system. And when we modified that to a hybrid scale where pay for performance wasn't a factor, we just didn't fully adopt all of their guidelines. But it does explain that market is a market area where we pull our people from. And when they developed our pay scale, it included Ada County Highway District, Bannock County, Boise, Caldwell, Chubbuck, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho Falls, Lewiston, Logan, Meridian, Missoula, Moscow, Salt Lake City, Twin Falls, and Twin Falls County. So the Northwest Data Exchange information includes those particular areas. A market range is 10%. It's 5% below market, 5% above market. We bring people on in the hybrid at 85% market, and then they move towards that through steps. Benchmarking is when you look at a position and then look at what other cities pay a similar position. When I benchmark, I look for job descriptions that match 70% of the job functions of each job that's looked at.
Lynette, what is our goal then? To get at par?
Yeah, we
with
want to
it?
be equal to what everybody else, so that when they don't leave and cite money is a reason that they're leaving the city, so that we can attract and retain people. We do have a lot of people leaving, and in some cases it is pay, but sometimes it's family, personal issues, other things that come into effect. So the current process is the city has 180 general employee and police civilian active positions. There are 213 total positions on the hybrid scale that have positions have been placed, but we don't have anybody in it, so it's still there, but we don't use it. And then we have 12 sworn police department positions and 18 fire department positions. So in FY18, 80 of those positions were benchmarks against different salary surveys. I participate in numerous salary surveys every year. The ones that I used last year were Milliman, Elko, Nevada, Meridian Library District, and then of course the Northwest Data Exchange data. Current process. So far this year, I have benchmarked 107 city positions. This is because of police and fire negotiations. And these are the cities that I've used. So instead of using aggregate data from salary surveys, I pulled the raw data to average where we're at with these people. You'll notice that Greeley, Colorado is on here. The fire department has opted to use them as a comp for their salary survey. I will tell you, it is not a fair comp. Their city attorney starts at like $175,000, their city clerk $200,000. So you'll see that the difference between what they pay and what we pay is significant.
Oh, they're in the shadow of Denver.
Yes, they are. So just, this is how we comp these positions. And then of the benchmark positions, I have only done in-depth analysis
on police and fire because of negotiations, and it is an ongoing process. I do check it frequently because I'm already doing it for police and fire. When I pull their general employee information, I put it in my spreadsheet to analyze the information. And this particular part probably should have been on the FY18 analysis, but when I benchmarked those 80 positions, we had 34 that were aligned with market, 7 were below, and 39 were over. This is going to be, you're going to have these positions that come over and under, because when we adopted the pay plan, the way we placed our executive level positions are typically higher right now than what other cities are. They are moving up, but that's just the way our pay plan went in. And then due to difficulties in recruiting some of these positions, I do tend to disagree with some of them. These are your pump and purification techs, your equipment operators and senior equipment operators, and engineers. These are very hard to recruit for, and even though the market data from those salary surveys say that we're overpaying, I don't believe that's the case because we can't recruit these people. So in the future, HR will continue to participate in salary surveys, we'll continue to benchmark positions, and then place new positions or reevaluated positions on our table. With the VDPA retirement, we will need a new outside consultant. I have emailed 4 or 5 different organizations that do compensation analysis, and I heard back from one, so that's who you're going to see. They're called PayScale. They are a big organization, and they crowdsource their data. It's real-time data. You can log into their online system, look at any position, and it will tell you national information, regional information, and it's both private and public data. So we primarily rely on public entities because that's what we are. As soon as we pull in private data, we're going to widen that gap in a lot of our positions, and will be lower than what the private market pays for positions like equipment operator. The services that PayScale provide, they include full benchmarking of all of our positions. They would analyze our existing structure, and they have like 7 or 8 different products that you can pull from for the price that we'll discuss in a second. And then the limitations of PayScale is that they do not comp police and fire. And this is because the ad pace and intricacies involved in these two departments are so different and complex that they just can't show you this is what these positions make. You have to analyze union contracts, and that takes a long time. So Heather and I have met with a representative from PayScale, and they are willing to do an additional presentation if council would like to see it, to go over their information and show you how it works with benchmarking and what it looks like. It is significantly more than what BDPA has cost the city for many, many years. So we're looking at $26,000 a year, and that is with a 3-year commitment with an opt-out fee. It is more money if you do it on a year-by-year basis.
Keep looking.
Well, along those lines, I was going to ask, surely there are other people who are using BDPA, and are they all going to PayScale, or are there others that just haven't responded to us, or we need to reach out?
I don't know why we're not getting response from, like, Milliman does the state of Idaho, and other, like Gallagher, they are doing one for, I don't know if it's Meridian, but I just finished a Gallagher salary survey for somebody else. But they're either going out to like Gallagher, or they're doing all of their own salary surveys. So this is condensing job descriptions down to like 2 paragraphs, and then sending out the raw data requests to all of your organizations and getting it all back and inputting it all by yourself. This could be done. You would have to probably bring on somebody else in HR to do recruitment, because it would be a full-time position to just do compensation.
Can that be done for $26,000?
No, a new person runs about $80,000 to $100,000.
80 to 100.
So HR is recommending PayScale. They are a good product. And if you don't adopt it this year, be thinking about it in the future, because this is the way it's going to go. We're really going to have to think about how compensation is analyzed going forward without with or without a different consultant. HR, the compensation specialist, will continue to perform the compensation duties as described earlier in the presentation. And then we'd just like to know some guidance from council on, do you want us to move forward with pay scale? Would you like to see their presentation? Do you want to use them? If so, we need to add it to the FY20 budget.
Heidi?
Well, I had a comment, which is if they're the only option, it seems like they're the only option, but I would be interested to know if we could learn more about some of the other options, like reach out to maybe some other cities that we know we're using and find out what they're doing and see if maybe there's somebody that we're not aware of that could be another
Sounds
better
like
option.
an opportunity for a startup company.
Yeah.
Good idea. Work from home.
Well, it sounds like that's what we were doing in essence. If they retired as a BPA.
Well,
I'd like
considering
to
they
do-
have the limitations, like, say if we
lost
were to
control.
do pay
It's all
scale, then
right.
what are we gonna do about the police and fire? Do you do those internally
It
then?
would still be this position that does that.
Okay.
I'd like to see both. I'd be interested in the presentation from pay scale, but I'd also really like to see some more options rather than just say that they're the only ones who responded, so let's go with them. If you guys could keep trying to reach out to the other ones.
Where's pay scale? Where is pay scale headquartered?
Don't quote me on this. I think it's either Seattle or Salt Lake. It's in our part of the country.
But I'd rather find out about the other options before having them come do a presentation,
Yeah.
you know, and spend their time and
There's
our
no
time if we're
urgency
going
to
to
get
find
this done
something
right
else,
away,
you know?
is there?
Right.
Other than budgeting?
What?
He said there's no urgency.
In Seattle.
I think we'll ask you to continue to explore before we do anything.
Yeah.
That's the consensus of the group. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other business that should come before the council at this time? If not, we stand adjourned. Thank you all for your excellent effort. Lunch is in the senator's office.